Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you're watching What If Naruto Befriended Hinata in Ninja Academy. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Hinata wanted to do something special for Naruto on his 10th birthday. She knew she had to do something for the orange-clad academy student, despite her extreme shyness and lack of ideas. Hinata observed him from afar as he rehearsed his cloning methods, which he attempted but failed miserably each time. She was aware of his awful chakra control, which is why he was never able to replicate with a simple clone. She observed as Naruto made numerous attempts but was always unsuccessful. At last, summoning all her bravery, she made the decision to take action and approached him. As Naruto attempted to replicate once more, he had no idea that he was being watched. He focused as hard as he could on the jutsu this time, expelling so much chakra that the attempted clone burst into a massive cloud of smoke. After the explosion, Naruto stumbled backward and muttered a curse. Naruto asks himself angrily, "Arg! Why can't I ever get this right?" Through the smoke came the quiet voice, "En Naruto-kun?" The wind picked up and carried the smoke away, revealing Hinata twitching her fingers together and blushing as she usually did when she was near Naruto. "Who's there?" Naruto yelled as he leapt to his feet. He said, Hinata. What are you doing here?" She blushed and said, I was watching you practice." "Really?" inquired a bewildered Naruto. "Because I want to help you get better. I hate to see you fail, Naruto," she continued. Naruto grinned and said, "Hinata, that's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me," which caused her to blush greatly. After saying, "Really? Thanks," she fell silent. She began, Naruto-kun, happy, but was interrupted when someone shouted as they entered the training area. A child brandishing a short katana shouted, "You won't beat me this time either, Rin-chan." Instead, the boy's eyes were a faint shade of purple, and his hair was dark raven. He was dressed in a long black coat that hung down to his ankles, black pants with light gray outlines, and a matching black shirt. His boots had the same shade of black. Under the coat, an empty black sheath, the same light gray outline as his clothes, was tied to his waist. Another sword of the same size collided with his. He was up against someone who was a good number of years older. All the way down her back, her purple hair was secured in a ponytail. Compared to the boys, her eyes were paler. They resembled Hinata's eyes, albeit with some pupils. She wore white clothes with red accents, matching the black-clad boy's white boots with a larger heel. However, her pants were a half-dress that only covered her back and reached mid-calf. Like the boy's coat, the dress hung down to her ankles. Her top was missing its shoulders, so it was only supported by the front and back. On top of that, she wore a typical Chunin flak jacket, which was white with red outlines rather than the customary dark green. She also had a red, outlined, pure, white sheath on her hip. His older sister retorted, "You always say that, Tatsumi," and deflected a brief barrage of blows. "Charge, Seraphim!" exclaimed Tatsumi. He lunged at Rin, who grinned back, and his sword was encrusted with black lightning. Rin raised her sword to her eyes and said calmly, "Okay. We'll play that way. Charge, Cherubim!" A moment after her younger brother's attack reached her, her blade was wreathed in pure white lightning. A loud thunderclap ripped through the air as the two blades struck each other, sending Hinata and Naruto reeling back a few feet. The two siblings engaged in combat directly in front of them, and they watched in wonder. They had never seen two individuals fighting so violently before, particularly not a Chunin and what appeared to be an academy student. After a short while of fighting, the siblings found themselves facing one another, separated by 40 feet, both of them gasping for air and holding their swords at eye level. They could no longer see lightning on their blades. Together, they cried, "Charge, Seraphim, Cherubim!" Both swords suddenly came to life. "You won't win this time, little brother," Rin said, brandishing her sword before launching an assault. Saying, "You've never beat me before and you certainly won't this time, Rin-chan." Tatsumi wielded his sword in the same manner and called out to his sister. As the sky turned to a deep gray, their attacks came to an end. At two distinct locations in the sky, lightning split apart and fused together. As Naruto and Hinata watched, they sensed the air filling with static, and two dragon-like creatures formed out of the gathering lightning. Behind them, the other two academy students also saw a stranger. When they looked up, they saw a Leaf Junin standing there, observing the ongoing battle. The man wore a mask that covered his face and neck up to his nose, and his gray hair flopped to the right. His shoes, clothes, and flak jacket were all navy blue. Additionally, he had his leaf headband on over his left eye, leaving only his right eye, which was trained on the battle, and a tiny patch of skin surrounding it exposed. When the siblings' attacks were complete, a black lightning dragon and a white dragon were left flying in the sky. The siblings simultaneously screamed, "Now face the wrath of the sky, Kirin," as they launched their individual assaults at one another. Together, the dragons let out a roar and descended upon their adversary. The Junin appeared between them with two handfuls of blue lightning in both palms just before the attacks reached one another. Just before the siblings could suffer any harm, the dragons and lightning balls collide. As he pushed the dragons back with his own attack, the Junin yelled and easily destroyed them. The sibling and the other two academy students were knocked onto their backs by the dragon blasts. The blue-clad Junin screamed, "What are the two of you doing?" while the siblings were recuperating from it. Sheathing their swords, they both rose slowly to their feet and moved to stand in front of the Junin. The siblings bowed their heads, and he felt anger flare in his eye. "We're sorry, Kakashi Sensei," the two murmured. "Sorry wouldn't cut it if either of those attacks had landed," Kakashi said angrily, gesturing to Hinata and Naruto, who were both in shock. What if that attack had hit either of them and they died? When the siblings first saw Naruto and Hinata, they appeared embarrassed. With a sigh, Kakashi placed his hands on his pupil's shoulders. The siblings approached Naruto and Hinata with their heads lowered and said, "I know that the two of you are only trying to get stronger, but using attacks like that on each other will only get you and others around you killed. Now go apologize to those kids over there." Before anyone else, Rin said, "We're sorry for getting the two of you caught up in that." Tatsumi laughed uneasily and said, "It's just once we get into training mode we kinda forget about everything that is around us." The two students from the academy just grinned. Naruto told the other three, "That was the coolest thing I've ever seen," shocking them. "You've gotta teach me how to do that." Tatsumi pulled his sword from its sheath and uttered the words, "It's not something we can teach, it's all thanks to these two. This is Seraphim, by the way." The sword glowed, and a ghostly figure of a black-furred wolf materialized next to Tatsumi. Naruto and Hinata jumped back when the wolf yawned and turned to face Tatsumi. "What do you want, Baka?" the wolf asked. Tatsumi gave the wolf a fierce look. Suddenly a woman's voice said, "Seraphim, you really shouldn't pick fights with you, master." Beside Rin, another ghostly image materialized. This time, it was a snow-white lynx. The wolf shouted, "Shut up!" As she moved closer to Naruto, Hinata mutely questioned, Who are they?" "These two are our swords," announced Rin. Hearing his name, the wolf turned to face her. "This is Cherubim," she said, gesturing to the lynx, who licked her lips in return. "And that over there is Seraphim." "I'm a who, not a that," he uttered in a snarling tone. She ruffled his hair a little and said, Yes, whatever you say," laughing. "By the way, my name is Rin Uchiha. And this is my little brother Tatsumi. We just transferred to the Leaf from the Hidden Flower Village." Tatsumi muttered angrily, "Our adopted father got sick of us being there to mess with his perfect life. Let's just say that he wasn't a very good father figure for these two to look up to," Kakashi said as he approached the group. "Tatsumi here will be starting at the academy tomorrow. I hope that the two of you will show him around tomorrow," the Junin said politely to them. In a cloud of smoke, the Junin and Chunin vanished. "And now, if you will excuse me and Rin, we need to go and finish their registrations." For the first time since their meeting, Tatsumi turned to face Hinata. Wow, she looks stunning. He started to picture himself going out on a date with her after thinking this to himself. He realized then that she was obviously attracted to the blonde boy next to her based on her body language. With a sly smile, Tatsumi said, "He obviously doesn't understand what's happening. You can fight against your sister pretty easily, even for just being an academy student. I would never be able to fight like that," Hinata stated. Disappointed, Naruto remarked, "Yeah, that's awesome. I can't even make a simple clone, let alone release a large attack like that." "The clone jutsu?" asked Tatsumi. As he produced a scroll from his weapons pouch and gave it to Naruto, Tatsumi asked, "It's really simple, but then again you may not be able to do the clone jutsu due to the fact that you may have way too much chakra in your body. Here, why don't you try this jutsu instead?" Naruto asked, "What's this?" as he unfolded the scroll. "It's the jutsu formula for the shadow clone jutsu. It may be suited better to you than the clone jutsu," Tatsumi stated. As he vanished in a cloud of smoke, leaving behind a small log, he said, "Well then, if you shall excuse me, I need to get back to my sister and Kakashi. Sensei. See ya around." Hinata said. He substituted away, as she turned to face Naruto. "Are you gonna need help with that?" Naruto muttered, "I'll be alright, Hinata-chan. You don't have to help me, no one ever does anyway." Her courage blazed like a Roman candle as she embraced Naruto at those words. When he said, "I want to help you Naruto-kun," she nearly burst into tears. Hearing this, Naruto was taken aback. Words like that had never been spoken to him before. He was too stunned to speak, much less move. After a few seconds, he choked out, "Hinata-chan?" She blushed brightly as she let go of the boy, remembering how shy she had been when she heard his voice. "I want to help you get stronger, Naruto-kun. It is your birthday after all," she whispered quietly. The boy's eyes were filled with pain, but more significantly, joy was also showing itself. Happiness he had never experienced before. Hinata blushed even more crimson as he gave her a tight hug and a huge smile. Naruto grinned. "Thank you, Hinata-chan." He sat down in the grass after she smiled at him and did the same. She took the scroll away from him as he was doing this and started to explain how jutsu works. Rin and Tatsumi, meanwhile, stood against a tree a short distance away in the tree line and observed the conversation. Rin asked her younger brother, "Why'd you do it? You could have won her heart if you truly tried to, ya know?" "Yes, I realized that, Na-chan. But she clearly had her heart set on him and I couldn't ruin that," he simply replied. Despite his advanced age, his younger brother's maturity never ceased to astound his older sister. She smiled and said, "HMPH. Let's go and leave them be," before descending into the trees in the direction of the Hokage's office. Tatsumi followed his sister's example. A few years later, Iruka was delivering his customary lecture to his class at the academy. Tatsumi, Hinata, and Naruto sat together as usual. Over the past few years, the three had grown close. They had grown even more mature and much stronger. Hinata had discovered her water chakra nature, while Naruto had discovered his wind chakra nature. As Iruka explained the graduation exam to his students, they all sat together and listened. Iruka informed the class that the clone jutsu would be the subject of their final exam. The class let out a few moans, but Naruto exuded confidence. "When your name is called, you may proceed into the testing room. First up is Tatsumi Uchiha," Iruka stated. He followed him into the testing room after getting up. A boy with darker raven hair jumped when he heard the name Uchiha. "Uchiha," muttered the boy. He trailed off and put his hands to his mouth, saying, "I thought I was the only one left besides." Before Naruto's name was called, the testing continued well into the hour. Hinata gave him a supportive smile as he stood up. He trailed behind Iruka into the testing room, where he stood with another white-haired teacher who had his leaf headband around his neck. Mizuki was his name. Mizuki stated quite bluntly, "All right, Naruto, let's see the clone jutsu." Naruto merely made his stance and nodded. "Shadow clone jutsu," he called, making a cross with both his index and middle fingers, and a flawless image of Naruto materialized at his side. The boy's ability to make a solid shadow clone, when he could barely make a regular clone, astounded the two teachers. Mizuki said, "That's not the jutsu we asked for, Naruto," with a somewhat icy tone. Naruto has always been treated coldly by that specific teacher. He was still able to replicate like the others. "Mizuki Sensei," Iruka said. "Even if it was a much higher jutsu than the others, he still gets the passing grade from me. And I'm sure the other teachers would agree with me." Mizuki nodded and grunted, saying, "Very well. He gets a passing grade, but I still think his cockiness should lose him that grade." Iruka left the room with Naruto and returned to the other room without saying anything more. He thought to himself, "Looks like I'll have to get the scroll of sealing another way." Iruka summoned another student to take the graduation exam as Naruto entered the room. The boy in the orange outfit returned to his seat next to Hinata and Tatsumi and took a seat. That went great. And I even stuck to Baka Mizuki, Naruto said with a smile. He grinned broadly as Hinata took his hand and planted a kiss on his cheek, saying, "Good job, Naruto-kun." He said, "Thanks, Hinata-chan," with warmth. At last, the remaining individuals who had not yet taken the test completed it. Iruka and the final test taker returned to the classroom. "Congratulations to all of you. You graduate," he exclaimed joyfully, to the cheers of the entire class. Iruka stood in front of the class shortly after the chaos subsided and every student had their leaf headbands on. "Alright, now that you've all become genins, you're going to be put on squads of 3 and 2 squads of 4. We had an uneven number of students this year, so only one squad will be receiving 4 people. I'll now announce those squads. Squad 1, Iruka started to announce the squads. Now for Squad 7. Naruto Uzumaki, Hinata Hyuga, and Tatsumi Uchiha, Iruka replied. All 3 of them exchanged glances and smiled. Squad 8. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Kiba Inuzuka. Sakura turned to her rival with a menacing grin and cheered loudly in her mind. The girl snarled at Sakura. RRGH, a boy with his hair pulled back in a tight ponytail at the top of his head asked languidly, "What's your deal?" She got Sasuke on her squad, but of course you're too lazy to understand something like this, Shikamaru, said the youngster. Shikamaru yawned slightly and said, "Of course I don't understand. It's 'cause I'm not a girl." "Man, I'd really hate to be stuck on a team with you," she replied. And now finally Squad 10. Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, Iruka said. Shikamaru chuckled, "Huh? What was that about hating to be on my squad?" As Iruka completed listing the members of that squad, Ino gave him a stern look. With a loud sigh of frustration, Ino placed her head in her hands and said, "And Shoji Akamichi." The last 2 individuals will now be assigned to squads. Karen Uzumaki will be joining Squad 7, and Shino Aburame will be joining Squad 8. Shino merely pushed his sunglasses higher onto his face. When Karen heard the squad she was being put on, she blushed a little. As the class started talking, some of the teams got up and left, and Iruka said, "Now class is dismissed for lunch. Afterwards you will all meet your Junin instructors." But as Squad 7 stood up to depart, Sasuke rose and stepped over Tatsumi, blocking his way. Sasuke demanded, "Hang on. I need to talk to you. Why is your last name Uchiha?" Tatsumi maintained his position despite being a little taken aback by this unexpected approach. The simple reason he gave was, because my Oto-san was a Uchiha. Sasuke was growing irate and asked, "What was his name? Was your mother an Uchiha as well?" He grinned at her startled expression and said, "Actually no, my mother was actually a Hyuga. Just like Hinata-chan. As for my father, his name was Itachi." When Sasuke heard that name, he seized Tatsumi by the shirt collar and hurled him against the wall. Everyone in the room looked around to see what was going on. Sasuke yelled, "Did you just say Itachi Uchiha was your father?" The man said. "Yes. Now could you let me down? Clearly your anger is aimed more towards Itachi and not me. Would you care to tell me why?" Tatsumi asked. "He's my older brother. The man who murdered the entire Uchiha clan in a single night. The man who I am going to murder with my own hands," said Sasuke after calming down a little and letting Tatsumi go. When Tatsumi heard this, she was taken aback because she knew Sasuke was telling the truth. "I'm sorry. I had no idea what Oto-san did." After shaking his head, Sasuke walked out of the room. The other members of Squad 8, meanwhile, had assembled and were heading out for lunch. Karen walked slowly over to Squad 7 and gave Tatsumi a quick pat on the shoulder. A very attractive girl was standing behind Tatsumi when he turned around. Her hair was red and hung over her shoulders. Her eyes were naturally light pink, and Tatsumi thought they looked great with a pair of simple gray glasses. She was dressed in a purple jacket, short shorts, and boots that reached her thighs. With her glasses nervously pushed up her nose, she said softly, "Can I have lunch with you guys?" Together, the 3 smiled and said, "Sure." Karen smiled as the 4 of them departed for Naruto and Hinata's preferred training area. The 4 new allies conversed with one another while they were seated together at the Memorial Stone training ground. "Iruka said that your last name is Uzumaki, right?" Naruto asked, turning to face Karen. Karen looked at Tatsumi and said, "Yes, it is. I think that the two of us are actually cousins like Sasuke and Tatsumi here," in response to Naruto. Naruto was beaming. "It's good to know that I have at least one person out there that I'm related to that isn't dead." "Is everyone that was closely related to you dead too?" Karen asked, glancing at him. Naruto just nodded, the thought causing pain in his eyes. But as soon as he looked up from his instant ramen cup, they were different. "But I've got Hinata Chan to look after me. And now I have a cousin I didn't know I had until today," he said with a grin. After blushing at his remark, Hinata recalled Tatsumi's earlier statement that his mother was a Hyuga. Tatsumi.kun, you said that your mother was a Hyuga. Do you know her name? Hinata inquired. Tatsumi replied, "Actually yes I do. Her name was Mariko. Rin. Onesan said they left us in the care of the leader of a group of spice traders from the hidden flower village when I was only 3. So I don't remember much about her, my father neither. Today I received a bit of shocking information about him though." Tatsumi continued to speak. "I wonder if Onesan knows." After eating the remainder of their lunches in silence, they got up and began to return to the academy. Naruto then made the decision to try to lift everyone's spirits. "Hey, we just became Genins," he exclaimed, putting his fist up. "Believe it?" He and Karen shout together. That made everyone in the group laugh. "I guess that verbal tick runs in the family," Naruto chuckled. Karen laughed and said, "It probably does, ya know?" A group of Junins gathered around the Hokage's desk in his office. In order to identify himself as the Hokage, the elderly Hokage wore a traditional white kimono with red designs. His hat was white as well, with the exception of the red front that featured the black kanji for fire. Rin and Kakashi were among those Junins. The Hokage questioned, "You've all got your teams, are there any questions?" Rin held up her hand. "Yes Rin? I was wondering if it would at all be possible if I could trade with Kakashi-san?" she said. The elderly man blew smoke from his mouth after taking a puff from his pipe. Looking at the Junin, the Hokage said, "Only if it were okay with Kakashi." In response, Rin grinned. Kakashi shrugged, "I don't have a problem with it, my old subordinate." The Hokage surveyed the room and said, "Very well. Any other questions?" He nodded when no one else spoke. All of the Junins bowed and departed his office, leaving the Hokage to perform his duties. "You're all dismissed then." He laughs to himself, hee. "Rin, I have a feeling that you're gonna have a tough time with that squad," and returns to his paperwork. Once lunch was over and every other squad had gone, there was just one squad left in the classroom. Squad 7 would be the one in question. When Naruto got up, the 4 Genins were all sitting there chatting. "This is bull. All the other teams have left and are probably going on their first missions while we are here stuck waiting for our teacher to get here," he yelled. "That does it," he said, approaching the chalkboard, grabbing an eraser, and adding powdered chalk to the bristles for added effect. He then firmly placed it between the wall and the sliding door so that it would strike someone in the head if they entered the room. Naruto got out of the chair he was standing in and smiled evilly at his scheme. "Baka, our teacher is a Junin. There's no way they would fall for something like that, believe it," Karen stated to him. A hand reached into the door and pulled it open as she was finishing her sentence. When the Junin entered with a cloud of dust, everyone was startled to see the eraser strike and cover his head. Immediately the Junin began to hack up the chalk dust and cough. A female voice said, "That's unpleasant," which made Tatsumi smile. "Nichan?" he inquired as Rin was covered in white chalk powder after the dust had cleared. At her expression, Tatsumi and Naruto then started laughing uncontrollably. Karen uttered the words, "I can't believe that actually worked," in shock. "Is she a Junin, really?" She and Hinata shared the same thought. "Please forgive Naruto.kun for that," Hinata said softly. Rin laughed and got a glare from Tatsumi. "Well, first I'd like to say to anyone who isn't my little brother, I'm sorry you have to be on his team," Rin said. The voice behind them said, "Second," as her chalk powder covered shadow clone vanished. "You couldn't have possibly thought I'd fall for something like that." Hinata appeared somewhat taken aback, and Karen grinned. They thought together once more, "I suppose she is a Junin after all." After saying, "Now let's go to the roof. I'm sure you're all tired of being in this classroom," she vanished in a cloud of smoke. The four genins got up and hurried to the roof, where they discovered Rin idly watching the clouds from the railing. She gestured for the four to sit on the stairs directly in front of her as they approached. "All right, that's better. Now let's begin with introductions. My name is Rin Uchiha, Tatsumi's older sister. I like to sit under the sky on nice days like this and just watch the clouds roll by. I'm not too fond of Tatsumi sometimes, but I really can't stand perverts. My dream for the future is to find mine and Tatsumi's mother and father and bring them back to the leaf. Now it's your guys' turn," she stated. Tatsumi turned around and said, "Well, most of you know me. I'm Rin, Nekken's little brother. I like training with Naruto, Hinata, and Rin. Nachan. I really don't like people who abuse their power. And my dream for the future is the same as my sister's." Rin gave her brother a smile. "All right, you in the orange. Your turn," she stated. He grabbed her hand and said, "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I really like Hinata. Chan and I like ramen from Ichiraku Ramen." She blushed, something she hardly ever did anymore. He concluded by looking at the Leaf Village's Hokage monument. "I don't like being looked down upon by people who don't know me very well, but I put a smile on my face anyway. And my dream for the future is to become the Hokage. That way I will know I earned the respect of everybody in the village," he said. Turning to Hinata, Rin said, "That's a tough dream to reach. Good luck," and nodded for her to leave. "My name is Hinata Hyuga. I like spending time with Naruto-kun and Naruto-kun himself. I don't like the way people of the village treat him at all, and I especially don't like the caged bird seal of the branch family of the Hyuga. My dream for the future is to abolish the seal in hopes that the main and branch families will get along in harmony," Hinata said with a grin. "She must be the girl mother mentioned," Rin said, nodding and turning to face Karen. She said, "All right, you're up," to the girl. "My name is Karen Uzumaki. I'm Naruto-kun's cousin. There is a person that I like, but I'd rather not say who it is. I don't like the fact that I don't have enough courage to confront said person, but I hope to gain more confidence in myself to say something. And my dream for the future is to become a great medical ninja like Tsunade of the Sannin," Karen said. Rin laughed to herself and got up from her seat. "Oh Tatsumi, you always know when other people have their hearts set on each other, but when it comes to you, you are completely clueless," she said. "All right, you four. Tomorrow we are gonna have our first mission. It'll be a simple bit of survival training," Rin replied. "Survival training?" inquired Naruto. "But I thought we already learned that back at the academy? Aren't we full-fledged genins?" Karen responded. Hinata got to her feet and said, "Yeah, what was that graduation test for then anyway?" "Oh that was to see how many of you might become genins. Of all 30.2 of you who just graduated, only 3 teams usually pass. Rarely does more than 3 pass. And also the chances of you failing are about 60.6%, Rin said without any emotion in her voice. Rin's raised hand silenced the other 3 as they stood up next to Hinata and began to wonder why this was happening. She disappeared in a cloud of smoke after saying, "Meet me tomorrow at the Memorial Stone Training Grounds at 7 a.m. Oh, and you better not eat any breakfast, or else you'll puke." Naruto shouted, "That's so unfair," to no one in particular. When Hinata placed her hand in his, he relaxed. "Don't worry guys, she just said that to make the match harder on us. I remember Kakashi-sensei talking about a similar exercise when we first came back to the Leaf Village. If my memory serves me correctly, it'll be a bell-snatching exercise. We need to use teamwork to get them, but here's the problem. There are only 2 bells. This test is designed to pit us against one another. Tomorrow morning we need to overcome that fact and put the mission before us instead of deciding who gets a bell and who doesn't. I say we all go over to Naruto's apartment tonight since his is the biggest place, I'm guessing. That way we can plan out for how we are going to take the bells from my sister tomorrow." With that, everyone agreed and left to go to in their homes. Knowing that she would require her weapons tomorrow, Karen packed a bag and carried them to her apartment. Hinata, meanwhile, followed suit and strode into the Hyuga mansion. After packing, she searched the Hyuga records for anyone with the name Mariko, but she couldn't find anyone. Before everything was torn apart, Tatsumi made sure to pack a lot of his traps in his bag and then looked at a picture of himself, his mother, father, and sister. "I'll bring you both back," he sighed inwardly. "I swear." He then left for Naruto's. On the other hand, Naruto was tidying up his extremely disorganized apartment rather than packing. Numerous chopsticks and cups of instant ramen were scattered all over the place. After cleaning as much as he could in a panic, Naruto eventually managed to bag up all of the trash. He needed to get all of his clothes off the ground now. A simple but enormous task. Soon he had laundry to do. After finishing that, he made the decision to brew some tea before everyone arrived. There was a knock, so he picked up the trash and went to the door. In order to prevent any members of his team from seeing the trash, Naruto hastily concealed it in his closet. After forcing the door shut, he wiped his forehead on his sleeve before approaching the door. When he opened it, Hinata was the first person inside. He said, "H. Hinata. Chan," in surprise. Hinata had never visited his place before, he just realized. He said, "Come in," grinning. With her shyness largely gone from all the time she spent with him, she returned his smile and walked in, kissing him on the cheek. As Naruto closed the door behind her, she removed her shoes by it. She put her bag down by the couch and said, "Hello, Naruto-kun," to him. Naruto inquired, "Were Tatsumi and Karen not with you?" She smiled and blushed a little as she said, "I wanted to be the first one here to spend some alone time with my Naruto-kun. They were still a ways behind me when I got here." Naruto turned to her, blushing a little. He almost dropped the tea he had for Hinata as he choked on a sip of his own. What? She continued to smile as she told him, "I said I wanted to spend some time alone with my Naruto-kun." Her words caused Naruto to smile, and he placed her tea in front of her. He sat down next to her and asked, "So, if I'm your Naruto-kun, does that make you my Hina-chan?" When he said that, she flushed and took a sip of her tea. She whispered softly into her teacup, "Yes. Yes it does." After placing the cup on the coffee table, she looked at Naruto. Naruto-kun?" she inquired, flushed. Naruto sat down and observed her intently before answering, "Yeah, Hina-chan." Her eyes met his as she leaned in his direction. As she leaned closer, she told herself, "I have to show him how I really feel about him." Only a few inches separated their faces. Hinata's face was as red as a tomato, her sweat trickled down her brow, and her heartbeat was in her throat. This was the closest she had ever been to Naruto. Well, this close and alone with him. Before closing the distance between them, she closed her eyes and mustered all of her courage. With a loud cheer in her head, she gave Naruto a quick kiss on the lips before stepping back from him. When she kissed Naruto, he was taken aback. He nearly choked on his heartbeat as he asked her, "Hina-chan, what was that for?" She whispered, Because I love you. I always have, Naruto-kun," as her blush deepened. She said, "I think deep down I have always loved you too, Hina-chan." He grinned and leaned over to give her a shocking kiss before she gave it back. Just before they left for Naruto's apartment, Karen and Tatsumi made a quick stop in Ichiraku to get a bite to eat. Tatsumi turned to Karen, and they sat down and gave orders. He inquired, "So, who or what was the thing that you liked earlier?" She smirked at him and said, "That's for me to know and for you to find out." When Tatsumi said, "Oh come on, please tell me," the ramen was placed in front of them, and Karen just shook her head and began to eat. Tatsumi turned to see Naruto's picture hanging on a wall with a banner above it. "Customer of the Month" was displayed on the banner. Tatsumi turned his head back toward the owner and called out, "Hey Oja-san." He asked Tatsumi, "Yes sir?" as he turned to face her. "I noticed you have Naruto's picture on the wall over there. Does he come in here very often?" "Oh yeah. He's been coming in here every day since he was 5. He was always so bright and cheery even after the way people always treated him. He never took that bright smile from his face," the elderly gentleman stated to Tatsumi and Karen. Tatsumi turned to his bowl of ramen and started eating, grinning and saying, "That sounds like Naruto." Tatsumi and Karen began to walk in the direction of Naruto's house after the meal was completed and paid for. Since Naruto's apartment was only a 5-minute walk from Ichiraku, they arrived quickly. They approached his floor and rapped on the door. "Yo Tatsumi, Karen, where'd you guys go?" Naruto said as he opened the door. "We decided to stop and get something to eat before we came over. Can we come in?" replied Tatsumi. Naruto said, "Yeah sure. Want some tea?" As they entered and removed their shoes by Naruto's and Hinata's, they both nodded. Naruto brought them each a cup of tea and they sat down. Tatsumi, since you know more about this exercise tomorrow than we do, why don't you explain it to us? Naruto asked. Tatsumi placed his tea on the coffee table and turned to face the other three, who were staring at him intently. Basically, the whole thing is based on teamwork. When me and Onesen fought Kakashi Sensei, he had us use teamwork to take the bells from him. Even though I had Chunin level amounts of chakra at the time and Onesen had Junin amounts, we had an extremely hard time doing so. It took us until after midnight before we finally got the bells. Luckily this time, though, I know how the Junin fights, Tatsumi said to himself. Leaning forward, Tatsumi pulled a pen and a scroll from his weapons pouch. Alright, my sister uses lightning-based attacks. The same as me. I know a lot of her jutsu, but she may have learned some new ones. She is a Junin after all. Hinata won't be able to go up against her very well since her chakra nature is based on water. She should only use taijutsu against Rin. Onesen was never good at taijutsu ever. And since Hinata's specialty is gentle fist, we can use that to block off her chakra points. Tatsumi next glanced at Naruto. Naruto, since you use wind-style ninjutsu, you can reflect her lightning back and keep on attacking better than me, since mine and hers will only cancel each other's out. I can face my sister using Seraphim up to an extent, but she's always been better than me at swordplay. Although she's never beaten me in sparring matches, she always trumps my sword fighting, but in the end my stamina wins out. After a brief period of silence, Tatsumi turned to face Karen. As for you, Karen, what kind of fighting style do you use? I prefer to use medical ninjutsu and support type jutsu, she stated. I have a special Kekkei Genkai that allows me to heal people through biting. I can also sense people's chakra. For instance, she said to Hinata, Hinata's chakra is kind and gentle, but it's also strong and protective. Tatsumi's chakra is strong. It's almost a Junin level. It's a very warm chakra with what feels like a guardian angel watching over it. With a quick glance in her direction, Tatsumi said, it must be Seraphim's chakra infused with mine. Maybe so. Anyway, Karen said, turning to Naruto, Naruto's chakra is warm as well, but also. She interrupted herself as she sensed the demonic chakra encircling Naruto's chakra network. Karen gave him a slightly worried look but dismissed it. As she sensed Naruto's dark presence within her, she started to shake uncontrollably. All eyes turned to Karen, who was unable to speak. It appeared as though she had just seen death. With concern, Tatsumi said, Karen, Chan, what is it? An unidentified voice declared, she's in a state of shock, as Seraphim transformed into a pure black wolf. She felt the demonic chakra of the Kyuubi. His chakra is very evil and full of hate. Now as to why she felt that chakra is because the Kyuubi is sealed inside of Naruto. And from what I can tell, the Kyuubi has been sealed inside of the boy since the day he was born. Everyone looked at Naruto, who was shocked. Naruto whispered, did you say the Kyuubi? To him. With a nod, Seraphim said, yes, dear boy. There was a moment of silence. Well, even if he has the Kyuubi sealed away inside of him, he's still Naruto-kun. That's all he'll ever be. Said Hinata, angrily but without addressing anyone in the midst of the conversation. Yeah, that's true, Karen concluded. Besides, if he was the Kyuubi, don't you think he would have destroyed the hidden leaf by this point? There's no way Naruto is that demon. I have a very important question to ask you. What day were you born? Tatsumi said, turning to face Naruto. Karen asked, perplexed, what does that have to do with anything? Tatsumi said, just tell me, please, to Naruto. Naruto asked, perplexed, October 10th, 13 years ago. Why? I was born on the same day. I also became a Jinchuriki the day I was born. And I'm guessing you did too, Tatsumi informed him. Naruto shrugged and said, I guess so. All this is news to me. I don't see why any of that is relevant though. Because that would make us twin Jinchuriki. When two people who are born on the same day also become Jinchuriki on that day, the two are twins in a way. Here, bump fists with me everybody. There's someone I'd like you all to meet, Tatsumi said with a raised fist. Tatsumi closed his eyes and performed a half tiger seal, and the others followed suit. When the four teammates opened their eyes, they saw a dark cave with torches lining the walls on either side. Tatsumi performed a series of quick hand seals while standing in the middle of the cave. culminating in the ram seal. In an instant, the landscape transformed into a winter forest. The rapid scene change astounded the others. A female voice from behind said, "You've brought visitors today, little Tatsumi?" With a growl in its voice. Everyone turned to see a massive nine-tailed wolf resting like a sphinx in a clearing. In preparation for an attack, Karen, Hinata, and Naruto all leapt back and assumed defensive positions. "Oh please. I'm not gonna attack you. I'm not like the other tailed beasts. I'm actually pretty docile," she said with a smile. Getting everyone's attention, Tatsumi said, "This is Larka. The tailed beast sealed inside me. My guardian angel," grinning at Karen. He approached her and leaned against her paw, saying, "She's been sealed inside of me since I was a baby. And we've become great friends in that time." Hinata questioned, "So is that why Seraphim manifests as a wolf?" "Actually no, it just happened to be a lucky coincidence. It's also a lucky coincidence that me and Naruto have tailed beasts sealed inside of us that have exactly the same number of tails," replied Tatsumi. Everyone turned to Naruto. "Wait a second here," they said. "You're saying that I have something like this sealing inside of me as well?" "Kurama, my twin brother is nothing like me anymore. He used to be very caring and kind to everyone until our father, the sage of the sixth paths, was killed. But that's a story for another time," Larka informed them. "Who's Kurama?" inquired Naruto. "The Kyuubi," said Larka. "Oh. I never expected him to have a name. All 10 of us have names," Larka said, turning to Tatsumi. "Anything else you needed, my dear?" Tatsumi smiled and said, "Nope. Just thought I'd drop by and show you off." Nodding, Larka said, "Very well then." Everyone in Naruto's apartment opened their eyes. Karen remarked, "Well, that was eye-opening." "Sorry if she scared anyone," Tatsumi said, rubbing the back of his head while chuckling uneasily. Hinata said to him, "It's fine," with kindness. Karen grinned at him and said, "Yeah. Larka seemed really nice for being a tailed beast." With a laugh, Tatsumi said, "Yeah, she is pretty nice." Naruto muttered, "I have the Kyuubi sealed away inside of me." Everybody looked at him. The others nodded as Naruto bumped fists with Tatsumi. "Naruto, this isn't going to be easy to deal with. It took me some time before I accepted, but I'm sure if you tried to get to know Kurama it'd be fine. Here, let's go meet him," Tatsumi said, raising his fist to Naruto. "It'll probably be better if just me and Naruto go. That way Kurama isn't overwhelmed." Both Tatsumi and Naruto blinked into a pitch black room. A huge golden cage stood in front of the two of them, and there were a few torches on the walls. The kanji for seal was written on a large sealing tag that was attached to the cage. Immediately there was a deep growl. A deep, growling voice said angrily, "Who's there?" Larka then materialized next to Tatsumi in a one-tailed form. Her voice was sorrowful as she said, "Kurama, what happened to you?" As it emerged from behind the cage, the Kyuubi growled, "Who are you, she? Wolf?" The orange fox, which was roughly 15 stories tall, glared at the three of them while swishing its 9 tails languidly back and forth. "Your twin sister, Kurama." The fox growled, "When we were born, there was not a wolf among the 9 of us." "Foolish little brother," she replied, "you don't remember me because I chose not to be seen. Our father agreed and helped hide me from you all. I wanted to be the guardian angel over all of you, and I always was." Tatsumi shouted, "Kurama," and the fox turned to look at him. He gestured to Naruto, who waved a little up at the fox, saying, "This is Naruto, your Jinchuriki." The fox only gave Naruto a growl. Naruto told the fox, "I hope we can work together one day, Kurama." "That will take quite a long time before I ever trust a human ever again," Kurama said. The two boys and the wolf vanished after Naruto nodded and said, "I'll find a way to make you trust me, believe it." Kurama thought to himself, "Naruto maybe he could bring us all together again," before he lay back down in his cage and fell asleep again. When Naruto and Tatsumi opened their eyes, they noticed the girls conversing while seated on Naruto's couch. Hinata inquired, "So it's Tatsumi that you like?" Karen replied, "Ever since he came to the Leaf, I've always thought he was a wonderful person." Tatsumi observed the two girls and cleared his throat. Karen blushed instantly, just as Hinata had done just hours earlier after kissing Naruto. Startled that they had returned so soon, Karen asked hastily, how much of that did you two hear? Tatsumi lied, saying, all I heard was that you thought somebody was a wonderful person, so as not to draw Karen any more attention than she already felt she was receiving. With a small sigh, Karen said, okay, good. Grinning, he said, so who is it? Like I told you earlier, it's for me to know and you to find out, she laughed. They all chuckled. Well, we had better get some sleep for tomorrow morning. It's gonna be a brutal exercise, Tatsumi said. The others agreed with a nod. Do you guys need any blankets or pillows? Naruto asked as he got to his feet, and they all nodded. Then, ignoring the few bags of trash he had previously stuffed inside, Naruto went to his closet and opened it. They all landed on top of him as he opened the door. Naruto fell back while the other three genins laughed. Oh no, I had completely forgotten about these being in here, Naruto thought to himself. He got up in shame and looked down. Sorry, I was in a hurry earlier and didn't have time to go take these to the dumpster before you guys showed up, he said. Hinata got up from the sofa and approached him. She grinned at him, took one of the bags, and walked to the door with him carrying the other two bags, saying, it's okay, Naru.kun. I'll help you take it out there. As Tatsumi got up and gathered a few blankets for the group to use, Naruto turned to face Karen and said, well, the blankets and extra pillows are in there. Help yourselves. Naruto closed the door behind him and Hinata. He touched Karen's hand with his as he gave them to her. His touch made her flush, and she gave a little start. Oh sorry, Tatsumi said as they met eyes. She gazed at him, her light pink eyes catching his heartbeat in his throat. Over the years, he had been gradually falling in love with them. Even though he had seen her on the day he started at the academy, he chose to keep quiet about it. After a few more seconds of observing one another, Karen turned away, blushed, and placed the blankets on the couch. Tatsumi turned to retrieve some pillows from the closet after observing her for a few more seconds. Tatsumi placed the pillows on the floor, and Karen laid out a couple of blankets to lie on. He threw it on and hit Karen by accident. She smiled and threw it back at him, hitting him in the face with the pillow. Hey, watch it, you, she said. Karen grabbed her own pillow to use, but Tatsumi stopped her blow with a laugh and a grab of the pillow. Tatsumi struck her with his pillow while she laughed. She hit Tatsumi back after blocking a few more blows. With her and her glasses on the couch, Tatsumi ducked and struck her in the face blindly with his pillow. He said, oh crap, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to knock your glasses off, as he sat down next to her after dropping the pillow. Tatsumi turned to her and picked up her glasses. Both of them flushed as their eyes met once more. Karen questioned him, Tatsumi, do you really want to know who it is that I like? Tatsumi said, I have a guess, while maintaining eye contact with Karen. He leaned in and lightly touched her lips, and she swallowed. Tatsumi said, ah, here goes nothing, as he leaned in to give her a passionate kiss. She gave a little gasp and kissed him again. They both sighed as he broke the kiss, feeling proud of themselves for making such a significant move. Taking her glasses from Tatsumi, Karen said, we should get some sleep before placing them on the coffee table. He got up and went to his designated sleeping spot. Yeah, I guess so, he said. Karen got up and changed in the bathroom. After a few minutes, she returned outside in a tank top and shorts. After that, Tatsumi entered and changed into shorts. Karen had already laid down when he left, and she glanced up at him. Her eyes widened at once. Wow, she thought, he looks good without a shirt on. He gave her a smile before settling into his position. Good night, Tatsumi, Karen beamed as she addressed him. Night, Karen, he said, grinning back at her. Both of them quickly dozed off. He halted and drew Hinata near to him as they made their way back to Naruto's apartment. The sudden action startled her, but when she realized he was kissing her, she smiled. Naruto whispered to her, I think I'm in love with you, Hina-chan, after he broke the kiss. I love you too, Naru.kun. But, unfortunately, we should get back before those two get worried or worse, she said with a grin. Naruto couldn't resist giving her a smile in return. Before long, they returned to Naruto's apartment. When they entered, Tatsumi and Karen were already asleep. But they weren't prepared to find them dozing off with Tatsumi's arms wrapped around her and Karen nestling into her chest. When Hinata saw the two of them, she stifled a laugh. Naruto simply grinned at his companions. Naruto said, I'm going to go change into something to sleep in, as he entered his restroom. A few moments later, he returned in a shirt and shorts. Shortly after, Hinata entered and changed as well, returning to the main room with a long shirt that covered her shorts. Tatsumi and Karen were in the center of the room, so Naruto lay down somewhere else. Hinata blushed deeply red and asked shyly, Naru.kun, would you care if I slept next to you tonight? She was relieved that Naruto couldn't see her blushing because it was dark. With a slight flush, Naruto said, "S. Sure." She took a pillow and lay down beside him after nodding. In an attempt to feel his warmth, she pressed herself against his chest. Before long, they were both asleep. They all went to the Memorial Stone training ground the following morning after Squad 7 had gotten ready and eaten a quick breakfast. 10 minutes prior to 7 a.m., they arrived. To keep it fresh in everyone's minds, Tatsumi reviewed the plan he had devised the previous evening while they waited. Naruto and I will use our ranged ninjutsu to hold Rin Onesan at bay while Hinata engages her in close combat. Karen will use her support ninjutsu to provide cover for me and Naruto while strengthening Hinata's attacks. I'll also be covering Karen myself in case Onesan decides to attack Karen directly. If Hinata can attack quickly enough to close off her chakra points, we can end this match with ease. If not, it's gonna be hard getting those bells off, sis. Not saying Hinata won't be strong enough, I'm saying Rin Onesan is super fast. Before we actually engage in fighting though, me and Hina-chan have a cool new jutsu we want to use against her, Naruto stated. What kind of jutsu is it? Karen asked Tatsumi as they turned to face each other. It's a surprise, says Hinata. Tatsumi said encouragingly, alright then. Let's win this so we can become genins, as the other two shrugged. They all pounded their fists and waited. Rin called out to them, yo, as she entered the training area 3.5 hours later. Karen and Naruto both immediately got up from their seats at the same moment. They all exclaimed, hey, you're late, together. Well, I accidentally dropped a mirror earlier so I took extra care to get here, she said with a grin. Yes. I'm positive that's what it was, thought Karen and Naruto simultaneously. Rin placed an alarm clock on a stump and cleared her throat before saying, well then. Let's get this started. It's set for noon. You have until then to take the 2 bells attached to my waist. If you can't, then you'll go without lunch. You'll be tied to one of the posts here on the training grounds and you will watch while I eat my lunch in front of you. You may also use any means necessary to get them from me, including shuriken. The 4 of them nodded and took an attacking position. Ready. Start. Rin shouted. Tatsumi immediately unwrapped his sword and charged Rin. In the meantime, Naruto and Hinata started creating hand seals with the other 2 after clapping their left and right hands together, respectively. After completing their seals, they each put their other hand together. Hinata finished with a half-ram seal, while Naruto used a half-bore hand seal. They all yell, Gale style, Blizzard Storm Jutsu, together. As a storm moved in, the sky grew darker, and the training ground was immediately surrounded by freezing winds. Karen concentrated her jutsu on Hinata and Naruto and performed a few hand seals. She called, Heatwave Support Field. Hinata and Naruto warmed up right away. When the storm had completely passed, Tatsumi leapt back to Naruto's position. Hinata hurried Rin with her chakra covered hands as soon as he touched down. Rin drew her sword and used the flat of it to block Hinata's attacks on her chakra points. Naruto screamed, wind style, severing wind, and hurled a wind blade at Rin from his arm. She ducked out of the way with ease, but Hinata kicked her in the head. Rin leapt back and used her sword to launch a lightning bolt at Naruto. Wow. These guys work well together already. Tatsumi must have explained my fighting style to them. However, that was our initial encounter with the hidden leaf. Rin grinned and quickly made a series of hand seals, saying, I've learned some new tricks since then. She exclaimed, Earth style. Ruptured earth, as she slammed her hands into the ground, dividing the battlefield and displacing all of the fighters. Genjutsu. Paralysis, she yelled as she leapt to Tatsumi and met his eyes. Damn it. Tatsumi exclaimed as he instantly froze, attempting in vain to resist the genjutsu. Release. Karen exclaimed as she emerged from her hiding place and approached Tatsumi, who immediately collapsed to his knees. He said, "Thanks for that," to her. Tatsumi pulled out his sword as she nodded. Lightened by lightning, Seraphim exclaimed. "Time to get serious. Charge, Seraphim." "Let's go, Karen," he said, leaning toward his sister before he waited for a response. "Heat wave support field," she exclaimed as soon as he made a few hand seals, and Tatsumi immediately warmed up. It wasn't until Karen's jutsu warmed him up that he even realized he was cold. She called out to her teammates, "Support jutsu. Strengthen," and demonstrated her jutsu. The strength of each of them increased instantly. As Naruto charged up another severing wind and sent it in Rin's direction, Hinata used a gentle fist to block an attack. She kicked it in the direction of her younger brother after easily avoiding it. Karen made several hand seals as she leapt in front of Tatsumi as soon as she saw the approaching wind attack. She called, "Protective Barrier Jutsu." As Tatsumi leapt over Karen, Naruto's wind attack skidded off and flew harmlessly up into the air. He shouted, "Chidori Spear," and thrust his blade at Rin. Rin barely had time to avoid the deadly speed at which the lightning that surrounded Seraphim shot towards her. Her shoulder was lightly scraped by it. "I really hadn't expected these four to push me this far," she growled in frustration. "They have good teamwork though, considering how little time they have spent together." In any case, she leapt into the air. Calmly, "Charge, cherubim," she said. With a blade encrusted with pure white lightning, she flipped over and flew straight down as she reached the top of her jump and briefly stalled in midair. She used the momentum provided by gravity to drive the blade into the ground all the way to the hilt. Wires flew out of her boots and she held her body upright. She electrified them at once. "Lightning barrage!" she screamed, whirling the wires and herself around. The four teammates were all struck by the wires, which zapped them with powerful electricity. She swiftly launched herself into the air after finishing her attack, carrying Cherubim with her. As quickly as a cat, she pulled the wires out of her boots and landed on her feet. Rin turned to face Tatsumi as he started to laugh. She asked angrily, "What's so funny, little brother?" When the others dispersed in a cloud of smoke, he remarked, "You fell for everything. You were only fighting me the entire time, you know, and you believed they were vanquished." Shadow clones. Stunned, Rin asked herself, "But how?" before saying the final sentence. Tatsumi grinned as she stood up and said, "They all switched with my clones during that last attack, just before you flipped in the air." He and his sisters looked at each other. He yelled, "Genjutsu!" Paralysis, as his sister attempted to use Cherubim to harm him. Before her blade could strike his bare arm, she instantly stopped. As she attempted to move, she swore, "Damn it. Game over, Onesan," Tatsumi declared with assurance. "You know you're not the only one," Rin said with a sly smile. As the clone's statement spread, the real Rin concluded, "Who knows how to use shadow clones?" Tatsumi turned to deflect his sister's sword blow, but her blade sliced right through him, and he disappeared in a cloud of smoke. An additional shadow clone? Rin swore bitterly to herself. "You simply adore shadow clones, don't you?" 8 trigrams. 2 palms, Rin exclaimed as she felt 2 chakra points become close. As she emerged from the smoke the clone had produced, Hinata screamed, 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms, and aimed the final palm strike at Rin's chest. Feeling the effects of all the previous palm strikes, Rin quickly jumped away from the final one. Hinata's final blow just struck the floor. Rin felt 2 blades at key locations on Hinata's body and one against her throat as she attempted to attack her. She turned to see Naruto and Karen at her sides, each brandishing a kunai, and Tatsumi behind her, holding Seraphim to her neck. She smirked and said, "Your teamwork is incredible." Rin then burst into arcs of electricity, zapping her opponents in the vicinity. But a ninja must always see through deception. Now face the wrath of the sky. Kirin. A dragon of white lightning roared at the 4 genins who were stunned as it emerged from the clouds. All 4 of them flew through the air as the dragon struck the ground like a massive bolt of lightning. Except for Hinata, who replaced it with a log before the attack hit the ground, they all blew away in a puff of smoke as they collided with objects. Tatsumi shouted from the tree line, "My turn. Face the wrath of the sky." Kirin. As his own dragon of all. Black lightning sped in Rin's direction. It hit her the same way Rin's had a few seconds before, launching her into a tree. She coughed up blood from the impact as she collided. Tatsumi hurried toward her. He screamed, "Onesen!" out of fear. She blew away in another cloud of smoke as he got to her. Okay. So perhaps there are a few too many shadow clones. But Naruto uses hundreds of them constantly, so I don't think I'm offending anyone. Like I said earlier, a ninja must always see through deception. I figured Kakashi Sensei would have drilled that into your thick skull. Rin said in a very menacing tone while holding cherubim at Tatsumi's throat from behind. The other three leapt behind her, holding kunai to 3 key locations on her body. Tatsumi grinned to himself, saying, "I thought he taught the same thing to you too, Onesen. I have been the decoy all this time." Tatsumi exclaimed, "And I know this one isn't a shadow clone," with a triumph. Haha. You were duped. I'm betting you assumed it would be another shadow clone. Insert Smite Guy's nice guy pose, complete with all of his shiny teeth. Rin lowered her sword from her younger brother's neck and grinned down at him. He got up and turned to face her, grinning foolishly. She ruffled his hair and said, "Baka," to him. "Your teamwork was incredible, you four. Well, me, Hina, Chan, and Tatsumi have been training together since you guys came here to the Leaf. And we just found a way to incorporate Karen's support ninjutsu into that," Naruto said with pride. The words, "Yeah, it was really easy once we all got to know Karen better," were a source of encouragement from Hinata. Karen grinned at Tatsumi in particular, her new teammate. Rin gave a proud nod. With a hint of anxiety, she said, "Now would you guys kindly remove these kunai away from me?" Tatsumi grinned and snatched the bells from his sister's waist. "Why would we do that, Onesen? A ninja must always see through deception, and we're not about to take these kunai from you until we have the bells," he said. As the other three removed their kunai from Rin, she gave him a fierce look. They all chuckled when she sighed. "I guess Kakashi Sensei drilled that into your head better than I thought he did. Alright then. Let's go have some lunch. Where shall we go? My treat since you all passed." After exchanging quick looks, the 4 genin all exclaimed, "Ichiraku ramen," at once. "Alright. Squad 7. Mission complete. Let's go get lunch," Rin said, laughing at the 4 of them. An unidentified figure watched the 5 of them leave the training field from a tree limb and said, "You've become fine ninja, Rin. Tatsumi. I hope one day I can return to you," before vanishing. When Tatsumi paused and looked at the branch the figure was sitting on, she saw that it was empty. To jolt him out of his reverie, Karen took his hand. She said, "Hey silly, what are you looking at?" "Huh? Oh, it was nothing. Just thought somebody was there," he responded. "Probably got the feeling from the adrenaline still working through your body from the match," Rin said, shrugging as she glanced at him and then at the branch. Tatsumi trailed off, maybe so, as he started to walk again toward Ichiraku. As they walked, the 5 of them talked to each other. Rin asked abruptly, "Hey, did you guys eat breakfast this morning even though I said not to?" Then, as they returned to town for dinner, the whole group laughed. They would start living as ninjas in the real world tomorrow. Naruto said, "Naruto here. I'm at point A, believe it, while wearing a headset." Tatsumi said, "Tatsumi, I'm at point B, not long after." "This is Hinata. I'm at point C and waiting orders," Hinata claimed in a low voice. Karen added a few seconds later, "I'm at point D, believe it." Observing a small animal from each of the 4 points, the 4 of them sat in the trees. It dashed into the brush and headed for the center of town. "He's on the move," exclaimed Tatsumi. It was chased by all 4 genins. Before it vanished, they saw it dash past a few people. The Uzumaki cousins screamed, "Damn cat!" They both detested cats, and this one was no different. As Naruto and Hinata went around the buildings to cut off the street, Tatsumi and Karen climbed onto the roofs on either side of it. It swiftly turned down an alley when it noticed Naruto and Hinata on the ground. It ran straight up to a fence down the alley, and the 4 genins ran after it. Naruto screamed at the cat, "Stupid cat!" as the 4 surrounded it. The only response it gave was a hiss that made the hair on the back of its neck stand up. Tatsumi cautioned, "Steady Naruto, we don't want to scare him off." Tatsumi moved forward, and the cat snarled at him. It was now only 2 feet away from the team. Hinata whispered, "Hang on a second," to the others. She knelt before the cat and held out her hand for it to sniff. "Can the 3 of you back up?" she asked quietly. They nodded and did as they were asked. Don't let him get past you, Hina-chan, Naruto told her. Hinata simply nodded, keeping her eyes on the cat. Come here. I'm not gonna hurt you, Hinata said quietly to the cat. The hair on its back smoothed out, but it didn't quit growling completely. It's okay. They aren't gonna hurt you either. The cat quit growling finally and sat on its back legs, tail swishing back and forth quietly. Hinata still held her hand out as it took a step towards her nervously. The cat got closer to Hinata and began sniffing her hand. Hinata smiled as the cat finished walking up to her and started to purr as it rubbed its back on her legs. She picked it up, gently stroking its fur. Looks like we got him, Rin said from out of nowhere. Missing cat Tora found. Mission accomplished. Let's get back to the Hokage's office and finish this mission officially, and get our next mission. The four nodded and leapt off towards the Hokage's office. Oh, my little Tora is back, a rather large woman said loudly as she took the cat from Hinata. The woman proceeded to squeeze the cat close to her chest. It almost looked as if it was struggling for air. Seeing this earned suppressed snorts from Naruto and Karen. Rin smacked them both in the back of the head with her hands, not moving from where she was standing and not taking her eyes off of the Hokage. Even though she thought it was a hilarious display, she still kept her composure in front of the Hokage. The woman paid the Hokage for the success of the completed mission and left with her cat, still squeezing the life out of it. As soon as the woman left the room, Naruto lost his composure and began laughing hysterically, thus earning another smack to the back of the head. That was well done, you four. This is the 7th time this week he has run off, the Hokage said. And now we have some more missions for you guys to partake in. Some of these include gardening, walking the mayor's dogs, babysitting his kids, also picking up the groceries for his wife, and... No way. All we've been doing since we became Genins 2 weeks ago are these stupid missions. An academy student could do these. Naruto yelled, cutting the Hokage off. We need an actual mission. Do you ever shut it? Rin asked to him, smacking him in the back of the head harder than the other 2 times. Oh. Naruto complained. What the hell was that for? Because you're complaining too much, Rin said, flashing him a glare that almost always silenced him. She had developed this trait a few days after passing these 4. The back of the head smacking as well. Well, I wouldn't complain if we got an actual mission and not babysitting. Naruto shot his own glare back at Rin, which was never a good idea, but in this case Rin would hold her composure. Silence. The Hokage yelled at them before Naruto could say anything else. Naruto fell silent before mumbling something under his breath that was ignored by all in the room. The reason you're getting these types of missions is because you are merely Genins. And you will receive D-rank missions unless I say so. At this point Iruka chimed in, Hokage. Sama, these 4 have shown exceptional skills in taking on missions using their teamwork. And from what Rin told us in her report, they have some of the best teamwork she's ever seen. Even after adding a 4th member that they didn't really know entirely from the academy. The Hokage took Iruka's words into consideration before sighing, blowing smoke from his ever-present pipe out of his mouth. Very well. I'm going to give this squad a C-rank mission. The 5 of you are going to be escorting a man back to his home and protecting him while he finishes a bridge connecting his land to an adjoining one. It's only C rank because you will not be facing any enemy ninjas but merely a small gang of inexperienced thugs. The Hokage turned to the man standing by the door, send him in. The man nodded and opened the door and walked out for a few moments before returning with a man wearing very basic travel clothes and a tattered pack. He had a bottle of some unknown substance in his hand, probably sake. What's this? 4 puny brats and 1 ninja. I thought I would be getting a whole team of ninjas, he said, insulting the Genins, thus earning him glares from all 4. Rin stepped up to him. I can assure you, these 4 are very well trained. You will be under their care for the length of this mission. Her eyes showed that the statement meant that his life practically depended on the 4 Genins behind her, with her actually saying so. The man gulped slightly, which didn't go unnoticed by Rin. She smiled almost viciously at her victory, setting the man in his place for insulting her team of Genins. Even if they were idiots sometimes, she wouldn't dare let anyone who didn't know them insult them. Very well then, he said, taking a couple steps back. My name is Tazuna, and I need you to escort me back to my land and protect me while I finish the bridge I am building. Together, Squad 7 gave a nod. They followed Tazuna out of the room and out to the hidden leaf gates after getting paid for finishing the previous mission. As soon as they left the village, Hinata inquired, "Where do you live, Tazuna-san?" "I live in the land of waves. It's a small country with no ninja to protect it, but it can be prosperous at times. Although as of late things have gone downhill. That's why I'm building a bridge to connect our land with the main land," Tazuna told them. As he spoke, every ninja, well, everyone except Naruto, listened. As they went down the street, he was in front of the group. He stepped into a rather deep puddle as they turned a corner. Naruto yelled, "Aw man," as he extracted his foot from the water. But along with his foot, a hand was wrapped around his ankle and emerged from the puddle. As two ninja leapt out of the puddle, the arm that came next threw Naruto into a nearby tree. The man and another man leapt out of the puddle. "Little brat. That hurt," he exclaimed. Both of them wore heavy camouflage clothes that were concealed by a black cloak. They all had breathing apparatuses over their noses and mouths. A thick gauntlet that appeared to shoot projectiles from it hung over one of their arms. Their claws were an inch thick or longer, covering their hands. "Defensive formations, everyone," Rin called out, pulling cherubim out of its sheath. Karen and Hinata remained near Tazuna, each holding a kunai, while Tatsumi did the same, drawing seraphim. The first guy said to the other, "I've got the brat in orange." The second growled, "Okay. Just don't take too long, there are others here to take care of." While the second one ran in Tazuna's direction, the first one simply grunted and went for Naruto. As Naruto climbed out of the tree he was in, Tatsumi leapt in front of the first. With a snarl, Naruto leapt up next to Tatsumi, holding a kunai. Rin saw the two dark ninja wearing headbands at that moment. They were four people wearing squiggly lined headbands. With the bottom ones immediately beneath the top ones, there are two on top and two on the bottom. Mist ninja? Why are they in this place? Rin pondered in her mind. She saw the mist ninja dash over to where Hinata and Karen were. Karen threw her kunai at the ninja who dodged easily. The mist ninja then fired his own kunai from the gauntlet. As the kunai flew towards them, Hinata jumped in front of them and blocked them with her own kunai. She then threw her two past the mist ninja in front of her, aiming for the one attacking Naruto and Tatsumi. She then took a gentle fist stance and activated her Byakugan as the ninja drew near. Karen made a few hand signs and placed her palms on Hinata's back. "Support jutsu. Strengthening," she called, making Hinata's attack power rise significantly. 8 trigrams. 2 palms. Hinata yelled, slamming 2 of her palms into the mist ninja's arm. 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms. Hinata's last palm struck him directly in his heart, stopping it in an instant. However, adrenaline was still moving through his body as he swung his clawed hand at Hinata's throat. Right before the attack hit, Karen knocked her out of the way and took the claws to her upper arm, making her scream loudly in pain. Both Karen and the mist ninja fell to the ground in a heap. Meanwhile, the first mist ninja ducked as 2 kunai flew straight at his head and fired his own kunai at Tatsumi and Naruto from his gauntlet. Tatsumi blocked them with seraphim while Naruto simply dodged them. Wind style. Severing wind. Naruto called and flung the blade of wind at the mist ninja. The ninja jumped to the side to avoid the attack, then fired more kunai from his gauntlet. Charge. Seraphim. Tatsumi yelled, as Naruto jumped in front of the kunai to cover Tatsumi as he charged up an attack. Wind style. Wind wall. Naruto yelled as he blew a wall of wind at the kunai, knocking them all away. Chidori Lightblade. Tatsumi called the name of his jutsu, leaping over Naruto and sending lightning from his sword at the mist ninja. The attack struck the mist guy back into a tree, knocking him out cold. Tatsumi landed just as soon as he heard Karen scream in agony. "Karen!" he yelled as he turned and saw her fall along with the other mist ninja. He turned towards the mist ninja knocked out against the 3 and charged him with his sword aimed to kill. He let out a vicious battle cry as he reached the mist ninja. However, from out of nowhere, Rin grabbed her little brother by the collar of his clothes and threw him on his back. "Na-chan! What the hell are you doing?" Tatsumi asked angrily. "We need information from this guy and keeping you from killing him just out of pure revenge. Besides, Karen is okay. See?" Rin turned to her other 2 subordinates. Tatsumi did the same and saw Hinata helping Karen get up from under the second mist ninja. She looked okay with the exception of the deep claw-made wounds on her shoulder. Tatsumi sighed and sheathed Seraphim as he walked over to her. Right before he reached, a look of pure agony came over her face. She reached up and grabbed her arm, falling to the side screaming in pain. "Karen!" Tatsumi yelled and rushed to her side. He pulled her up into his lap, taking care not to hit her shoulder. Rin grabbed the dead mist ninja's claws and sniffed them. "Poisoned. And none of us know hardly any medical jutsu. But I can slow the poison down," Rin said as she made a quick set of hand seals. Her hands began to glow a bright green color as she moved them over Karen's wound, then the rest of her body. "That'll hold it off for a few days. Until then we need to get to the land of waves quickly." She stood up and turned to Tazuna. Rin's eyes flashed dangerously. "You and I need to have a serious talk. Why didn't you say that there were enemy ninja after you? This mission deserves to have an A or B ranking, not C ranking. You deliberately hid the fact that there were enemy ninja after you." "The land of waves is a small, poor country," Tazuna began. "We have no ninja to protect us. So when I began building the bridge to connect us to the mainland, the man who had taken control over us decided to do something about it. His name is Gado. He's a very powerful businessman on the surface. But underneath all that he sells drugs and other sorts of illegal items. And when he figured out that the bridge that's being built would break his control over the land of waves, he hired ninja to kill us all. Like I said before, the land of waves is a poor country. That's why I hid the fact of enemy ninja." At that moment the knocked out mist ninja jumped up and dashed away, shooting kunai at Tazuna. Said kunai then hit an invisible force field and flew into nearby trees. Everyone who was there flinched back when the kunai struck, all but one. Karen was holding her hands in the final hand seal for a protective barrier jutsu. Everyone there said a silent prayer to Kami when they saw Karen's hands. She opened her eyes and looked at Tatsumi. "Hey, silly," she said quietly. "Hey you." Tatsumi smiled down at her. "We need to get going," Rin reminded the couple. "That guy will most likely report to his superiors about us. And then that means reinforcements. Plus we need to get Karen to the land of waves so I can analyze the poison better. I could hear, but we could use better cover." The genins nodded and stood, Tatsumi picking up Karen bridal style, thus causing a blush to come over Karen's face. The group resumed walking to their destination as the mist ninja hid in the trees watching them. "That girl is gonna die in a few days unless you get the antidote," he smirked to himself before leaping off in the direction of his headquarters. He had to report to his leader. Even though he knew she would be pissed for failing the mission, he still needed to make the report. "You failed?" a female voice asked angrily at the mist ninja. He was silent, with his head bowed. "And you were defeated by genins no less." "You insolent fool!" she yelled as she quickly sliced his throat with a kunai. He didn't make a sound as he fell lifeless to the floor. "If you want something done right, I guess you've gotta do it yourself." She sliced her hand with the kunai and stabbed the blade into the corpse's back. "Blood-packed jutsu. Dead rise," she called after making a complex set of hand seals. The dead mist ninja slowly stood up and looked to the woman. "What is your bidding, Neko Sama?" he said flatly. She grinned to herself. "We are going to kill those ninjas and the damned bridge builder." A fever had broken out over Karen's face the next day, and by the time they got to the land of waves, it had worsened significantly. Rin reapplied the poison-slowing medical ninjutsu again, but it hardly helped. Tatsumi worried frantically about it, but Rin was able to calm him down every time he began to get over-worried. She had never witnessed Tatsumi become so upset about anyone or anything, and she was looking at her younger brother with a great deal of worry in her eyes. Given that he had been in love with Karen since his first day at the academy, she must have held a special place in his heart. He was simply extremely shy about it, which was odd given how gregarious he was by nature. He could always strike up a conversation with the other girls in his class, but he kind of froze when it came to Karen. Similar to how Hinata used to speak to Naruto. To tell the truth, Rin found it cute. But there was no time to consider anything cute in this circumstance. In order for his daughter to cure the poison, they had to take the Tazunas home. Because her late husband was almost always poisoned by some kind of fish while fishing, she was very skilled at those kinds of things. The man at the helm shouted softly, "We've arrived," as he rode through the thick fog. The master bridge builder had returned with ninja from the hidden leaf village in the land of fire, and they did not want anyone to know. He passed beneath a bridge that led to the larger bridge in the area and came out next to a dock. Silently, "This is where I leave you guys," he expressed. Tazuna got up and stepped out of the boat. Tazuna turned to face the bridge and said, "Thank you, Suski. You won't have to smuggle any in or out here in a little while." Tatsumi got off last so he could give Karen to the other ninjas as they all left one by one. He gathered Karen back in his arms as soon as he stepped onto the dock. Rin said to him, "Maybe you should let one of the others carry her, little brother," as they left the docks and entered a more forested area. Naruto told him, "Yeah, I can carry her so you won't be too worn out." Tatsumi said nothing but shook his head. Rin let out a sigh to herself. She was aware of her brother's tendency to be obstinate when he set his mind to something. As she walked next to him, Hinata put her hand on his shoulder. Hinata said of Tazuna's daughter, "It's going to be okay. Tatsumi-kun. I'm sure Tsunami will know what to do." Tatsumi gave her a feeble smile and a small nod. She smiled back at him with concern and care. After that, Hinata left Tatsumi's view and returned to her position next to Naruto. To ensure that nothing could happen to Naruto, she took hold of his hand and squeezed it firmly. Tazuna looked interestedly at the four children. It was the first time he had witnessed children this young show such concern for one another. In spite of Karen's extremely high fever, he liked what he saw. The voice of a woman said, "Well, isn't this just cute, coming from the trees?" She leapt in front of the group from the trees, blocking the path, saying, "It's so cute that it's disgusting." A mist headband was fastened around her waist. She was dressed in basic ninja gear, but it was much more revealing. The jacket, which was almost half flak, only covered her breasts. The length of her shorts was only mid-thigh. Senbon needles held her hair in place, tied back in a fan-like pattern. Except for her skin, everything about her was green. She had the same emerald green eyes and hair. All of the ninjas positioned themselves defensively. Hinata assumed her gentle fist position in front of Tazuna. Rin stood in front of everyone and drew cherubim. With two kunai drawn in each hand, Naruto was prepared to throw. As he drew seraphim, Tatsumi created a shadow clone to keep Karen safe. "I can't believe that you actually think you can take me on. I am Neko of the Blood Mist clan. You puny insects have no chance against me." The mist female laughed at this, her face lighting up with a sinister smile. Rin told her subordinates, "Everyone stay back. Even as a team, you won't be able to take her on." She thought grimly, "I probably won't be able to take her on myself." Neko suddenly charged at Rin while brandishing a kunai. Rin threw a kunai behind her back at Neko's head while blocking with cherubim. The mist ninja vanished, emerging between Hinata and Tazuna, each holding a kunai pointed at the throats of Hinata and Tazuna. When Rin saw her attacking them both, she gasped, but before she could react, an orange blur swept across her field of vision. Neko flew away from Tazuna and Hinata after the orange blur jumped behind her and kicked her in the back. Since Neko's movements were too quick for their eyes and brains to follow, neither of them knew what had just transpired. Hinata turned to Naruto, and his face was smeared with anger. Naruto shouted to Neko, "Don't you dare touch them," and she stood up once more. Neko grinned and said, "That was impressive, kid. I never expected you to move that quickly," before performing a complicated series of hand seals that no one else could see. Her words, "blood-packed rise," were malevolent. The mist ninja they had previously battled rose from the ground after she said that. His lifeless, white eyes gazed at Naruto, who recoiled in response. He said in a deadpan voice, "Is this the one, master?" She grinned and made another odd hand seal. Yes it is," she said. It nearly made her laugh. "Kill him. And while you're at it, show absolutely no mercy," she said. The undead mist ninja charged at Naruto, his eyes turning a fiery red. He threw kunai at Naruto with his gauntleted arm, but he either sidestepped or blocked them with his own kunai. Neko, meanwhile, vanished into thin air and materialized before Rin brandishing a kunai. She used the kunai to cut Rin's cheek before vanishing once more, this time in front of Tatsumi. She blurred away to stand next to a rather large tree, doing the same to him. Knowing full well that their lives could have been taken at that very moment, Rin and Tatsumi both flinched away from the speed of her attacks. It took a lot of strength for this woman to accomplish that without either of them noticing until it was too late. "Now try this attack on for size," she said with a malevolent grin while driving the kunai that had sliced the siblings deep into the tree handle. "Blood-packed jutsu," she exclaimed as she created yet another set of odd hand seals. The tree appeared to come to life instantly as it stood and blended with the surrounding trees. Neko chuckled down at them while perched on its shoulder. Each arm of the enormous tree monster, which was at least 20 feet tall, was shaped like a bludgeoning weapon. Rin muttered a curse. Damn. Two figures were standing at the tree line on the opposite side of the forest. One wore only sandals and gray, striped pants, and was much taller than the other. Brown camo arm warmers covered his arms up to his biceps. To keep the enormous sword on his back, he wore a kind of harness across his chest and back. His face was covered in bandages that extended from his neck to his nose. Additionally, rather than wearing a mist headband on his forehead, he ties it to the side of his head. His dark hair was spiked and kept short. But his companion was more clothed. She was dressed in brown, striped garments beneath a teal robe with white trim around the edges. There was a belt, like sash around her waist. She matched the first guy's sandals. The same mist emblem was placed in the center of the top of the tracker ninja mask she wore over her face. She had very long hair. The front hung down on the sides of her face that were tied at the ends, while the majority was tied back in a traditional samurai bun toward the top of her head. When they heard thunder and then the sound of the forest being torn apart, the two of them began to walk into it. The two of them leapt to the tops of the trees to observe the situation while on high alert. They witnessed a tree giant engaged in combat with two individuals brandishing lightning, wielding swords. As they watched, one of the figures struck at the shoulders, while the other sent lightning from its blade into the middle of the tree. The taller one said in a deep voice, "Haku, let's go," and he leaned in the direction of the battle. "Yes," the other one uttered softly. The four-leaf genins couldn't have been older than her. Rin and Tatsumi had returned to Squad 7 and were fighting the tree giant. Tatsumi shouted, "Chidori Lightblade," and blasted the tree with a stream of black lightning. After hitting the stomach region and pushing the tree back a few paces, it swung its arm in Tatsumi's direction. But Rin's attention was drawn more to Neko, who was perched atop the giant's shoulder. When Neko blocked the wires with the tree, Rin screamed, "Lightning barrage," and whipped the wires in her boots. The wires just struck the tree branches and flew. With a muttered curse, Rin pulled the wires back into her boots. The kunai in the middle of the tree caught her attention as she landed on a limb. "That's it." Rin's eyes widened in recognition. "Tatsumi," she called out, "aim for the kunai in that thing's chest." Tatsumi glanced at the kunai and nodded. There was a slight glow coming from it, but that was sufficient. Tatsumi drew his sword up to eye level after leaping back far enough. He shouted, "Charge Seraphim," as black lightning engulfed the blade. Tatsumi leapt for the tree and aimed the blade at the kunai while yelling a fierce battle cry. Tatsumi yelled, "Chidori Lightblade," as the black lightning sped toward the kunai. Neko attempted to block the lightning with the tree's arm when she eventually noticed it was occurring, but it was already inside its defenses. The lightning struck hard and sent the heated kunai into the ground as well as shooting out the back of the tree. In an instant, the tree died, and it soon began to fall backward. Neko swore as she jumped from the tree and onto a nearby pond. "Damn these people," she said. She grinned as she turned to face the battle Naruto was engaged in. Naruto was struggling against her undead subordinate. Naruto shouted, "Wind style," severing wind, and hurled several wind blades at the mist ninja in front of him. After blocking with his gauntlet, the ninja aimed his kunai at Naruto. The undead mist ninja was in the air above Naruto before he had a chance to recover. Naruto felt a foot in his face before he realized what was going on. As he touched down, the mist ninja exclaimed, "That was for a few days ago, brat, instead." "Oh no, compared to just a few days ago, this guy is far more powerful. Did she use that strange jutsu?" As he slowly got back to his feet, Naruto reflects. Naruto made a simple hand seal with his hands. He shouted, "Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu," as roughly 100 Naruto replicas materialized. "That's a lot of shadow clones." The mist ninja stepped back a little and surveyed the group. One Naruto remarked, "Well, if you're not coming to us, "Then we'll come to you," said another. The real Naruto declared, "This fight is over as of now," as the Mist Ninja were all charged. As the Sea of Orange approached him with kunai meant to kill, the Mist Ninja stumbled. He was a little afraid, despite the fact that the Mist Ninja was already dead. The 100 Narutos all tackled the Mist Ninja, punching him in the face, kicking his stomach, and stabbing him with the kunai. Naruto scattered the clones after the assault was over and observed the ninja lying there, no longer undead. "Damn brat!" roared Neiko as she charged at the gullible Naruto. But Rin was ahead of her before she could make it to the shore. Rin said, "I'm your opponent, Neiko," in a risky manner. Neiko made a set of hand seals and exclaimed, "Water style. Water prison jutsu." The water Rin was standing on immediately twisted up around her, creating a ball. Neiko grinned and said, "Okay, I suppose we can play together." Before the jutsu broke, Neiko inserted her arm inside. She said, "Well, that was a short play date," in a girlish, high-pitched voice. "Rin. Sensei!" exclaimed Hinata. "Stay back, all of you. There's no way you can take her on. You need to run." The final words made Naruto, Tatsumi, and Hinata shudder. Run? How were they able to flee while their sensei was trapped in that situation? All Neiko would do was hunt them down and murder them. "How can we just run away? She would only hunt us down if we ran. And we can't abandon you, Rin." "Sensei," Hinata murmured quietly. Tatsumi and Naruto glanced at her before turning to face one another. As Tatsumi created a set of hand seals, Naruto hurled several kunai at Neiko. Neiko kept her arm inside the water prison and avoided all of the kunai. She calmly stated, "That's not going to work on me, little boy," while glancing at Naruto. A giant shuriken was already in Naruto's hand, ready to be thrown. Her eyes grew a little wider. "Like I said before, something like that won't work on me," she snarled as Naruto hurled the shuriken. Neiko saw the shuriken fly directly at her. As it approached her body within feet, her face stayed composed. The shuriken flew into the air as she blocked with a kunai at the last second. The shuriken vanished in a puff of smoke to be replaced by Tatsumi, but she was unaware that Tatsumi was missing. He held his sword and pointed it down at Neiko. He slashed at Neiko, screaming, "Let my sister go!" She ducked back, pulling her arm away from the water prison. Tatsumi landed in the water after the sword barely cut her cheek. When Tatsumi reappeared, she gave him a fierce look. "You little brat!" she screamed. She charged Tatsumi, aiming the kunai at his throat as she did so. Just inches from Tatsumi's face, the kunai collided with a metal blade. Rin threw her sword back, sending Neiko skidding back across the water. "As I said before," Rin said dangerously, staring Neiko in the eyes with her activated Byakugan. "Your opponent is me." Neiko said to no one in particular, "New rules, huh?" "All right," she said, performing a series of intricate hand gestures. She completed the bird seal after roughly the 45th hand seal. Neiko called out, "Water style. Water dragon jutsu." Upon uttering the jutsu's name, a gigantic water dragon materialized behind her and encircled her in a protective stance. She called out another jutsu name and performed another set of hand seals, ending with the ram seal this time. She shouted, "Water style. Giant vortex jutsu." As the dragon sped in Rin's direction. With its maw open, it started to swiftly spin around. Just as the dragon smashed into the pond where Rin had been standing, Rin leapt back. Rin mused to herself, "Damn, that was close." The dragon burst up through the pond beneath her, and she leapt to the side to avoid it. Cherubim was raised to eye level by Rin. Calmly, "Charge Cherubim," she said. Rin released the wires in her boots into the water and aimed the sword at it. Rin said perilously, "Tatsumi, you had better get out of the water now." Tatsumi was too familiar with the voice she was using, particularly following the pranks he pulled on her. He swam swiftly to the shore and climbed out of the water after nodding. He immediately ran to where Naruto, Hinata, Tazuna, and his clone with Karen in hand were standing as soon as he was on firm ground. Panting, he uttered, "That was too close for my comfort." Hinata questioned him, "What's she doing, Tatsumi-kun? And does she have a Byakugan?" Tatsumi said, "Yes, she does. Remember, our mother was Mariko Hyuga. Now watch her," while maintaining eye contact with his sister. The dragon exploded through the water behind Rin as she stabbed Cherubim into it. Rin shouted, "Lightning barrage," as electricity arced through the water, directly toward Neko. The dragon that engulfed Rin whole was also arced by it. Rin felt the impact of her lightning strike, but she just reabsorbed the chakra. Rin also discovered that the vortex that Neko had called out was actually the dragon's interior. Rin was unable to determine whether it was up or down. "Oh no!" Rin shouted in her mind, struggling to hold her breath as long as she could because of the speed at which the vortex was swirling. Everything went cold just before her breath left her. The air she could breathe was freezing. She was in a tiny air pocket inside what she thought was the dragon when she opened her eyes and saw ice all around. "What the hell?" she asked, snatching cherubim from its ice covered casing. The wires were still out of her boots, she realized. Rin cried out, "Lightning barrage," as the ice beneath her was broken by the wires that were blazing. As she landed on a now frozen pond, she pulled the wires back. Tazuna and the Genins were all in disbelief at what they had just seen. The dragon was crashing down and resurfacing above the water with Rin in its belly. The entire pond then simply froze over, with half of its body above and half below. Startled, Neko turned to see who had done this. She became aware of the tracker ninja mask at that point. "You?" she murmured. "Why are you here?" "To kill you, Neko," said the man in the mask. The taller one leaned down to whisper in Neko's ear and said, "And do it by any means necessary," right behind her. Neko jumped away from Rin as he jerked around. She said his name, and Neko trembled. Zabuza, Sama." Zabuza, the man, rose to his full height. Rin and Neko were dwarfed by the man. At least 6 feet 5 inches or 6 feet 6 inches was his height. Watching Zabuza from behind the mask, the tracker ninja climbed down from the trees and stood next to the Genins. Neko yelled, "I don't have time for this bullshit," as she leapt from the scene. To hide her trail, she threw a few smoke bombs. The ninjas were surrounded by a massive amount of smoke. Everyone inhaled the smoke and coughed. Zabuza said, "Damn her," as the smoke dissipated. Rin informed him, she knew she had to retreat. Her chakra was almost out, and she turned off her Byakugan. "Thank you." "Did she say your name was Zabuza?" she said as she approached Zabuza. When she asked, "Yes, it is Zabuza Momochi, or the demon of the hidden mist," he answered. "And that over there is Haku." After giving Rin a small bow, Haku turned to face the Genins. She said, "Your friend, she's been poisoned, right? I can help her," to Tatsumi. Zabuza said, "Not here, Haku. Let's go somewhere else." "Right," she answered. Rin walked over to where everyone was standing and nodded to the others, saying, "Let's get to Tazuna's house." Before her vision went black, she approached the group. As she fell, she was not even aware of the conscious Genins calling her name. After picking her up in bridal fashion, Zabuza trailed behind the group. All the way to Tazuna's house, the Genins conversed with Haku. An hour or two later, they arrived, and Tazuna hurried inside to clear the table so Tatsumi could put Karen down. Haku removed her mask and approached Karen. Tatsumi noticed that Haku was very attractive when he looked up. She was a perfect fit for her green eyes. Tazuna's daughter Tsunami hurried all the men from the room while Haku unzipped Karen's jacket. Tazuna said, "Bring Rin up here," and closed the kitchen doors. The guest room was empty when he went upstairs and opened a door. He spread a blanket out and placed a pillow on top of it. After placing her on the blanket, Zabuza got back up. Tatsumi's face was plastered with worry as he gazed at his sister, who was unconscious. "Don't worry, kid. She's just exhausted. I would assume she used up too much chakra in that fight," said Zabuza to him. Tatsumi turned and walked out of the room after nodding and removing his bag from his back and placing it against the wall. Naruto also removed his bag and went out with Tatsumi, Tazuna, and Zabuza. Haku was standing in the kitchen doorway when Tatsumi came downstairs. Haku remarked, "She's stable and the poison is gone. Luckily I knew the type of poison the demon brothers used," as she watched Tatsumi leave the bottom stair. When she saw Naruto emerge into the light, she flushed. When Hinata entered the room, she noticed Haku's face flushed. Hinata couldn't help but experience a tinge of jealousy. For that to occur was just human nature. Hinata, however, was unwilling to lose to a stranger. When Hinata said, "We need to go look at Rin Sensei too," Haku snapped out of her reverie. Right, Haku said, nodding before following Hinata upstairs but not before giving Naruto one last glance. Zabuza watched Haku and laughed softly to himself. She's maturing, he reflected to himself. Zabuza resembled Haku's dad. Since he discovered the girl scrounging for food at the age of 5, he had been raising her. Her clan had fought an uprising and killed her parents. Even those who did not participate in the revolt were destroyed by the uprising. Prior to the attack on the clan, Haku was hidden by her parents. Although they were aware of the rebellion, they had declined to participate. Because of what the mist had done, Zabuza detested them. He promised to exact revenge on the Mizukage as soon as he could, but he was never given the opportunity. Before Haku could complete the tracker training courses, the Mizukage had been killed. The three-tailed Jinchuriki had been the new Mizukage. His claim to the title was the third, but soon after assuming his position, the third Mizukage simply vanished into thin air. And Zabuza and Haku departed soon after that incident. They avoided the mist as much as they could after being labeled renegade ninjas. However, they continued to experience occasional issues. Zabuza was startled out of his reverie by Tatsumi's question, Zabuza-san, why were you trying to kill that woman earlier? She's a rogue ninja like me and Haku are. We're trying to get rid of her so she doesn't bring the hidden mist near us, Zabuza said. But doesn't being a rogue ninja make you a traitor to your village? Replied Naruto. It does, kid. But it's better than following orders that are foolish and cause your allies to die because of those orders. I'd rather be branded a traitor than do that to my allies, Zabuza replied to them. Tsunami came in carrying a tray filled with teacups. She thanked the ninjas for their hospitality and tea, and they nodded in agreement. Thank you for bringing my father back in one piece, she said. After zipping up her jacket, Karen left the kitchen. Tatsumi got up, approached her, and gave her a hug. She embraced him back and said, "Were you that worried about me, Tatsumi-kun?" He whispered in her ear, "Yes, I was. Don't ever do that to me again." Karen nodded into his chest and grinned. In the meantime, Neko lay in her bed in the forest far from Tazuna's home while she was being healed by another ninja wearing an orange mask over his face. The ninja's right eye was where the mask spiraled. The ninja could see through a hole over where the right eye was. His eye, a fully activated Sharingan, gazed down at Neko with a menacing expression. He said, "Neko, you fool. You should have been able to kill them, but instead you ran away, while wearing a mask." "If Zabuza and Haku hadn't arrived, I wouldn't have had to," she muttered. The man inquired, "Your old teacher and his new subordinate?" "Yes," Neko said with a nod. Neko muttered a curse, "They came just as I was going to drown that Junin." The more she told herself than anyone else, "Next time, I'll for sure kill them." Then he vanished into a strange dimension that only he could conjure. "Well, either way you need to rest. You probably won't be able to move for a week after that battle. And the next battle you'll have one of Zetsu's clones with you," he said. When he was gone, Neko shuddered. She always got the creeps from that man. To make matters worse, he was sending a clone of one of his subordinates to engage her in combat. Zetsu was an extremely eerie man, if the man in the mask wasn't already. Before a short man with 2 bodyguards entered her room, Neko shuddered once more. The man said, "I thought I hired you to kill that bridge builder?" "Gato." "Yes you did, and he had ninja protecting him. Plus they got back up from my old teacher. Otherwise I would have killed them all. But next time, you won't have to worry about them anymore," Neko replied with a stern tone. Gato simply scoffed and gave her a glare before turning to go. "You better." Before they left, his 2 goons closed the door behind them. Neko muttered, "And when you pay me, I'm gonna kill you too," before falling asleep. Rin instructed the group in the tree climbing exercise over the course of the week. All 4 of her genins were able to ascend to the top of their assigned trees without falling before the end of the week. Naturally, before Karen took on this kind of training, she fully recovered using her support jutsu. Rin was pleased that her subordinates had finished the training successfully. Zabuza and Haku protected the bridge builder during their training. Unfortunately, Neko never appeared, despite their hopes that she would so they could murder her. After a day of construction, Naruto and Tatsumi jumped in their way just as they were about to arrive home. Sweat trickled from their foreheads as their weapons clashed. Haku saw that they had been practicing out here for a long time. As Tatsumi swung his sword at Naruto, she gave him a quick glance. After dodging the swing and launching his kunai attack, Naruto and the other fighter leapt off the road and returned to the trees to resume their battle. Haku watched Naruto and blushed a little. She couldn't help but watch him, even though she was sad that Hinata had taken him. If she worked hard enough, she might be able to get him for herself. Her sigh was louder than she meant to be. Zabuza placed his hand on top of her head after turning his head. He said, "You alright?" to Haku. Haku grinned and nodded as she glanced up at her teacher. "I'm okay, Zabuza." "Sama," she assured him. Zabuza gave a nod and went on. After entering his home and removing his shoes by the door, Tazuna proceeded into the kitchen. Haku and Zabuza followed suit. Haku approached the kitchen table and took a seat next to Karen and Hinata. In the last few days, the three of them had grown close. Even after a rivalry had broken out between Haku and Hinata over Naruto. Sometimes they made Karen laugh, and she couldn't help it. Karen was simply relieved that Tatsumi wasn't her target. Rin descended the stairs shortly after, with a slight limp. She inquired, "Where are the boys at?" Karen answered, "Where else?" She sighed and took a seat at the table, asking, "Training?" Soon after, the two boys entered the house while giggling. Tatsumi, removing his shoes by the door, remarked, "That wasn't a bad attack back there, Naruto. Nearly got me." Naruto said, "It's something new I've been working on. Not going so well though," and he also removed his shoes. Suddenly, a tiny voice asked, "What's the point of training so much? All that's going to happen is you getting killed by Gado's men. You don't have a chance in the world to defeat him." Inari chastised her son, Tsunami. Inari's voice rose, "What? It's the truth. They can't do anything to stop him, it was." Naruto gave the boy a look. "It's why we train, so we can stop guys like that. We train so we can get stronger and not get defeated by guys like Gado. But I guess a coward like you wouldn't know anything about standing up for yourself." Naruto bitterly said the last sentence. Inari's face took on a distressed expression, and tears started to form. There was an awkward silence of 30 seconds while everyone watched the two of them. They glanced at Naruto after first examining Inari, then back to Naruto. Finally, unable to contain her tears, Inari broke down and began to cry. Inari spun around and dashed for the stairs. Inari ran upstairs as Karen yelled, "Naruto," at him. Naruto said, "Whatever," and left the room to go upstairs. Who is that child assuming he is? Calling us weak ninjas. Right now, I'm going to put him in his place. Naruto pondered in his mind. Naruto heard sobbing coming from inside Inari's door as he stood there. "Huh?" Naruto asked, leaning closer to the door and looking through the gap. Sitting on his bed, Inari gazed at a photograph. With tears running down his cheeks, Inari cried, "Daddy, why did you have to die? Why can't I be brave like you were? Why am I such a coward?" Naruto turned and walked back downstairs after taking a quick look at his feet. Without speaking to anyone, he entered the kitchen. Hinata gave him a smile, but it quickly vanished when she noticed the expression on Naruto's face. She said, "Where are you going, Naru-kun?" while he was putting on his shoes. He said, "I'm going for a walk. I want to be alone for a little while," and then he closed the door behind him and left. Naruto fled the house as soon as he was outside. He climbed to a hill he had discovered with Hinata one afternoon and passed the training area they had used for the tree climbing exercise. Naruto took a seat against the lone tree that stood atop the hill. He gazed up at the sky and sighed to himself. Since Naruto never had a mother or father to look after him, he felt a little envious whenever he saw someone like Inari. Naruto was unable to avoid feeling jealous, even if Inari's father had been killed. He couldn't help but feel something for a boy who had lost his father, even though he knew it was wrong. Throughout his childhood, Naruto had only ever desired a family. Hell, sometimes it would have been enough just to avoid the villagers' cold, hateful stares. He was unable to enjoy his childhood when he went outside to train or just spend a day exploring the village and trying to figure out how many tricks he could pull before being discovered. With the exception of his birthdays, this was the standard procedure every day. That was never the case. A child's birthday ought to be the most memorable day of the year. They feel that they are being treated with more respect because they are 1 year older. Except for Naruto, this was true for everyone. Coincidentally, Naruto's birthday fell on the same day that the fourth Hokage was killed and the nine-tailed fox attacked Leaf Village. The villagers would give Naruto 10 times worse looks than they would on any other day if he ever left the apartment that the third Hokage had given him. The anger and intent to kill were almost palpable. The villagers even chose to attack him on that particular day one year. That day, Naruto made the decision to train, and he left his apartment to go to his preferred training location. But as soon as he entered the congested streets, he realized something was different. As usual, there were no crowds, and although Naruto couldn't see them, he could definitely sense the nearby villagers. Naruto, of course, dismissed this emotion and carried on strolling down the street. The villagers started to leave the alleyways as soon as he entered the middle of the street. They were all carrying some kind of weapon, and Naruto didn't care if it was a shovel, pitchfork, shoddy club, or the odd sword or knife. Naruto came to a complete halt upon seeing them. Then, with the intention of killing him, they charged at him with their weapons raised. Naruto shook his head before the horrifying recollection continued. When a voice cut through his thoughts, he was able to completely forget that day. Naruto-kun. The voice exclaimed. Naruto recognized Hinata right away. No matter how hard he tried, he would never forget that voice. When she called his name, Naruto said nothing. All he wanted was some time to himself. She discovered Naru-kun sitting beneath the lone tree and exclaimed, "Oh, there you are, Naru-kun." With excitement, she dashed to Naruto's location and took a seat next to him. "What are you doing out here alone, Naruto?" she inquired. "I shouldn't have said those things to Inari. Then when I went to go set him straight, I saw him crying. He was staring at a picture of his dad crying. I guess he died when Inari was younger. It made me think about not having any parents, and of everything that has happened to me in the past," Naruto said as one tear streamed down his eyes. Naruto was more hurt by the idea of never having parents than by the icy looks he always received from the villagers when he entered the village. Then he experienced an unexpected emotion. Hinata's embrace. Holding him as close to her as she could manage, she put his head to her chest. As Naruto's eyes started to well up with tears, she planted a kiss on the top of his head. It had been a while since he had sobbed this much when he thought of his parents, whom he had never seen. Now, though, something was the cause. Naruto wasn't sure if it was the memory of what Inari had to endure or the knowledge that someone was listening to him while he expressed his emotions. He only wanted to be held by the girl he loved, and he didn't care at the time. Soon after, Naruto put his arms around Hinata's waist and clung to her as if he might lose her at any moment. Hinata gasped when he held on to her, even though he wasn't really squeezing her. She enjoyed it even though she hadn't anticipated it. That's how they remained until the sun sank below the horizon. The whole time they were quiet. Wiping the tears from his eyes, Naruto got to his feet and turned to face Hinata. With that warm smile she always had, she glanced back up at him. Naruto adored that quality in her. As she accepted his hand, Naruto assisted her in standing up. When she was completely upright, Naruto bent over and gave her a gentle peck on the lips. The suddenness of the kiss made Hinata flush, but she returned the kiss. Naruto whispered to her, "Thank you for being there for me, Hina-chan." When she said, "I will always be there for you, Naru-kun," she grinned and gave him a hug. Naruto gave her a hug in return, putting his arms around her waist. The two failed to notice Haku standing in the tree line a short distance away as they broke the embrace. As she went to find them so she could bring them back for dinner, she couldn't help but notice how Hinata was holding Naruto. For roughly 10 minutes, she had been observing them, wishing she had been there rather than Hinata. Haku gave a headshake. Who was she to fool? She was completely enamored with Naruto, even though she had only recently met him. The idea of being in Hinata's position was nonsensical because she hardly spoke to him at all. She was still going to make every effort to win him over, though. "Hey, you two," Haku called to them, just managing to get her mind out of her head. Hinata and Naruto looked around to see who was there. When they realized it was Haku, they waved. "Rin. Sensei told me to come find you guys. Dinner's probably ready by now," Haku replied. After nodding, the two genins made their way to Haku, down the hill. After that, the three of them made their way back to Tazuna's house. Everyone was downstairs chatting after dinner when they got there. The only person there who was silent was Inari. Naruto approached him and took a seat next to him. Naruto expressed regret for his previous remarks. By the time dinner was over, Inari was giggling at the jokes that Naruto and Tatsumi were telling Rin, who slapped them both on the backs of their heads. Everyone at the table continued to laugh at this. Compared to the others, Rin and Zabuza spoke more to themselves. They discovered that they shared many things, particularly swords. When Rin looked at all the swords she had owned over the years, particularly Cherubim, Tatsumi rolled his eyes. Everyone retired for the night after dinner. While the four genins made pallets on the floor and went to sleep, Rin went to her room. As they both fell asleep, Naruto held Hinata, and Tatsumi did the same with Karen. After going to his own room, Zabuza promptly dozed off. Haku stopped Rin before she entered her room. "Rin. Sensei. Can I sleep in there with you? There's not enough room downstairs in Zabuza." "Sama prefers to sleep alone," Haku told her. Over the past week, these two had taken on the characteristics of sisters, and Rin grinned and said, "Sure thing." Haku received the older sister figure she had always desired, and Rin received the younger sister she never had. Grinning, Haku entered Rin's room and prepared a pallet for herself to sleep on. Haku said, "Rin. Sensei," while she was sitting on her blanket. Rin said, What is it, Haku?" and then switched off the light. "Is something the matter?" "Kind of," said Haku. "How do you get boys to notice you?" Rin was surprised by how abrupt the question was, but she quickly got over it. She was aware that, given her age, Haku ought to have started thinking about boys and other things sooner. When Rin turned 13, or was it 12, she was in the same state. She couldn't recall. Rin noticed that Haku was blushing a little as she looked at her. Rin said, "Well, first who's the boy?" as she sat down in front of Haku, grinning. Then Haku muttered, "Anon. It's is it Naruto?" Rin inquired, knowing exactly who it was. Haku blushed profusely and gave a shy nod. "Why, yes," she stammered out. This girl still had her shy side, even after becoming a rogue tracker ninja and being able to kill anyone without hesitation. Rin laughed to herself more than to Haku. "I thought as much," she said. "That's gonna be pretty tough to do. Even though I'm sure Naruto does notice you, he just doesn't do it in the way you seek. From the way I understand it, Naruto was very lonely as a child, never having any parents or friends made his life miserable. And on top of that, the entire village hated him, thus making his life closer to a living hell. Hinata was the first person to ever truly acknowledge him. She never hated him, but admired his determination from behind him. So he treasures her more than anything in this world. Not trying to sound like a downer, but that's an extremely tough bond that probably can't be broken." Haku sighed as she looked down, realizing Rin was correct. "Will I ever find anybody like that for me? I mean, I'm not even that pretty and everyone seems to be afraid of me." Rin laughed and blushed a little. "They just don't know you. And it's not you they fear but Zabuza. He looks quite menacing with his face wrapped up in that mask of his. Even if it does give an air of mysteriousness to him. And as for you saying that you aren't pretty, that's not true. You are a very pretty young girl. Everybody knows it. That includes the boys." "Really?" Haku asked incredulously. Smiled Rin. "Oh yeah. Just because the boys each have someone special in their lives, doesn't mean that they don't notice beauty when they see it. It's the same for every guy out there on Earth. They can't help but notice pretty girls, even when they're with their wives. I'm sure that there is somebody out there who likes you for who you are." "Is there anybody you like, Rin? Sensei?" Haku asked Rin with a feeble smile. "There's a possibility of that." Rin smiled positively. "Oh yeah? Who is it?" Haku inquired, her customary joy returning to her. "I think you may already know. Is it Zabuza, Sama?" Rin blushed as she smiled. "Maybe," Rin said with a little giggle. "I knew it!" exclaimed Haku triumphantly, grinning. When she smiled, it looked great on her face. Rin said, "Ha ha," with a low laugh. Rin got up and turned off the light, saying, "Okay, we need to get some sleep for tomorrow. And staying up all night gossiping isn't the greatest thing in the world, no matter how much fun it is." "Night, Haku," Rin uttered while reclining on her personal pallet. Haku said, "Good night, Rin. Sensei," as she rested her head on her pillow. They both fell asleep shortly after. The two goons from earlier watched the house from the trees as the entire house fell silent. The larger one said, I want to cut something. When do we get to and attack them? His hair was pulled back in a samurai ponytail. He appeared fierce due to a lengthy scar that ran across his face between his eyes. His jacket, which should have been around his waist, was on. But he decided that warmth was more important tonight because it was cold. He had a katana at his waist that was almost twice as long as Rin's and Tatsumi's. He was dressed in loose fitting pants with a few pockets. They weren't actually necessary. The second shorter man said, Gato told us to kill his family and leave the ninja to Neko after the bridge builder goes to work tomorrow. He wore a beanie over his nearly shoulder-length hair. He was tightly wrapped in his ubiquitous hoodie, which had sleeves that were too long for his arms. He was wearing cargo pants that were filled with various useless items. He kept money, nails, trash, and pretty much anything else he wanted. A katana the same length as his partner's was fastened to his hip. I really hate waiting like this, sighed the first man. The second man simply sat down against the tree they were standing on and shrugged. He said, whatever, you've got first watch, and then he went to sleep. Jackass, shot back the larger man. Rin woke everyone up the following morning, with the exception of Tatsumi and Naruto. They needed to take a break after 4 days of non-stop training. The two ninjas hiding in the trees kept a close eye on Tazuna as she and the other awake ninjas departed. They were aware that 2 more ninjas were still hidden in that group. Those 2 were growing weary of waiting as the waiting game went on. Between him and Naruto, Tatsumi was the first to awaken. When he entered the kitchen, Tsunami was the only one doing the dishes. He asks anxiously, hey, where did everybody go? They left already. Rin said you needed your rest since you've been training so hard. She thought that she would give you a break, replied Tsunami. Tatsumi was dressed and out the door as soon as she finished speaking. Tatsumi exclaimed, damn it Onesin, as he walked away. Tsunami merely grinned at his willingness to lend a hand. Tatsumi sprinted toward the bridge as quickly as he could. When they noticed that only one of the ninjas was departing, the 2 in the trees moaned. The bigger guy moaned angrily, when in the hell is the other gonna leave? I'm so sick of this waiting bullshit. He'll leave when he leaves. But you're right. This waiting is bullshit, he replied. Naruto, meanwhile, kept snoring softly while he slept. Hinata would most likely laugh at him if she saw him in this condition. She enjoyed seeing him in this state. Hinata found it rather endearing. Naruto himself woke up shortly after. He got up, walked drowsily into the kitchen, and yawned. Naruto said, morning everyone. Sorry I overslept, while still in a groggy state. He became aware that he was only speaking to Tsunami, who was already occupied with preparing lunch, as he opened his eyes. Morning Naruto. Everyone already left. You better hurry if you want to catch up with them. Tatsumi just left about 10 minutes ago, she said with a grin. Naruto exclaimed, what? Naruto hastily dressed and departed, waving goodbye to Tsunami. They left without me. Rin. Sensei, he exclaimed. The 2 thugs in the trees grinned to themselves as he walked away. At last, they would be able to enjoy their own kind of fun. Damn it. Why didn't they wake me up? Said Naruto as he leapt into the trees. The 2 leapt from the tree they were in and made their way slowly to Tazuna's house after Naruto had moved far enough away. The diminutive man rapped on the door. They heard Tsunami call from inside, just a moment. Instead. Soon after, the door opened and Tsunami was seen using a towel to dry her hands. She said, can I help you? When she recognized them, her eyes widened. Her husband had been murdered by these men 2 years prior. They pushed through the door before Tsunami could slam it in their faces. Evil smiles were on the faces of both men. Why hello there pretty lady, the larger man said, grinning malevolently at her. Tsunami shouted, get away from me, and hurled a plate at his head. While the other one ran around the table and grabbed her hair, the guy easily ducked under it. With an evil smile, he put his sword to her throat. A dangerous warning, make one wrong move and I'll take your head off, he said. The larger man proposed, let's enjoy ourselves with her before we murder her and her son. I was thinking the same thing. But I say we kill her son right in front of her then have fun with her. That way she won't be so inclined to fight back, the man who was shorter said. Right. The large man exclaimed as he entered the house and discovered Inari in his chamber. Inari screamed, let go of me, as she attempted to kick and strike the man. Tsunami begged, "Please let my son go, he's just a boy." "Not a chance," said the man who was holding her. He looked over at his companion. Calmly, "Do it," he said. The larger man drew his sword and brought it down, cutting through Inari's neck with an evil smile. "With pleasure," he said. When Tsunami saw the blow, she let out a loud scream, but she calmed down when the body vanished in a cloud of smoke. A voice called out from the doorway, "A simple substitution with one of my shadow clones." Quickly, the two goons turned to see who was speaking. It was none other than Naruto Uzumaki, sporting his trademark foolish smile. Over his shoulder, he held Inari. "That was really cool, Naruto. Thanks for saving me," Inari said as he descended. Naruto grinned and said, "No problem, sorry I was late." The larger man yelled, "Damn brat," and lunged at Naruto, aiming his sword for death. Two clones leapt behind the man carrying Inari's mother, and Naruto grinned. Both of them knocked him unconscious with hard karate chops to the sides of his head. The large man was nearly upon Naruto and Inari. At this moment, Naruto rose to his feet and used his two kunai in a cross pattern to block his sword. "All that training with Tatsumi now pays off," he said with a grin, declaring, "This is for Inari's dad." Naruto kicked the man hard in the stomach. Naruto grabbed the man by the collar as he stooped in agony and hurled him out the door into the waiting fists of two more Naruto shadow clones. The clone struck the man in the jaw with both of its fists. From inside the house, there was the sound of bones breaking. In agony, the man fell onto his back. He pulled a dagger from behind his back and screamed, "You little bastard!" Instead, he got to his feet and observed Naruto from his landing spot. Naruto said calmly but dangerously, "I would suggest that you just stay over there and not attack me if you want to live." The man screamed, "Not gonna happen," and started to rush Naruto. The unconscious goon was seized by the remaining clones in the house and thrown to the real Naruto, who then threw him at the charging goon. As the two struck, the dagger pierced the man's heart. The big guy yelled, "You little brat!" That hurt, as he yanked his dagger from his partner's back. This time, Naruto turned away from his clones and confronted the man directly. He was still holding both of his kunai. Naruto dashed to confront the assault. He dodged the dagger's ferocious slash. Naruto stabbed the goon through the shoulder with one of his kunai, which he had brought up under his arm. Then, with a swift and forceful motion, Naruto moved behind the man and stabbed the other kunai in the chest. Taking a deep breath, Naruto said, "I told you to just stay over there." Out of the house, Inari exclaimed, "That was incredible, Naruto." Naruto turned to give Inari a smile. Naruto said, "Of course it was. I did it," with a foolish smile. He approached Inari and lowered himself to eye level. "But killing isn't all that it's cut out to be. You shouldn't do it just because you can. Only do it if necessary, like to protect those closest to you," Naruto advised him. At what he said, Inari nodded. Naruto said, "Now take care of your mom while I'm gone. I've got to get to the bridge," before getting up and heading toward the bridge. As Naruto leapt through the trees, he thought to himself, "I hope they aren't in any trouble." When the group arrived at the bridge, they saw that everything was covered in a thick mist. It was very quiet, much too quiet for a building site. "Byakugan," called Hinata, looking directly into her eyes. As Rin engaged her Byakugan, everyone drew their weapons. "This mist is filled with chakra. I can also see the rest of the builders unconscious all over the place." From somewhere in the mist, Neko's voice said, "Well, it certainly took you all long enough to get here. I was beginning to wonder if I was going to have to wait all day." "I trained her before she went rogue," Zabuza said, drawing his guillotine sword. "Stay on your guard, everyone." Rin pulled Cherubim from its sheath and said, "You trained her? Why didn't you say something earlier?" In order to protect Tazuna, the group turned their backs on him, and Zabuza remained silent. Finally revealing herself, Neko said, "Why don't you also tell them what my blood-packed ninjutsu can do, Zabuza?" "Sama." Beside her was a man with yellow eyes and a flawless white complexion. He wore a black robe patterned with red clouds and had green hair. To be honest, he appeared to be a monster. Neko gave Haku a menacing grin and pointed to him, saying, "On second thought, why don't I just show you myself?" Neko called, "Blood-packed control." As she approached Neko, Haku appeared to enter a daze. "Haku? No." shouted Zabuza. Neko merely grinned back at him as he glared at her. Neko told him icily, "You shouldn't have chosen her as an apprentice instead of me." Then, turning to face Haku, she said, "Kill them, my dear." Haku simply drew a couple of senbon from her weapons pouch and nodded. Then, aiming for Hinata first, she charged at the ninja group. She attacked what her strongest emotion at the time, jealousy, was focused on because of the jutsu and jealousy. However, the senbon was sliced in half by a sword just before Haku arrived at Hinata. When they saw who it was, everyone on the bridge gasped. Tatsumi leapt from the top of a structure designed to provide shade for the workers during the day's extreme heat and landed in a crouch. His eyes had a red glare to them as he slowly got to his feet and glared at Neko. Before realizing it was his eyes, Neko assumed it was a trick of the light. It was the first time Tatsumi had ever used his Sharingan. Whereas the left eye had two, the right eye had just one shaped mark close to the pupil. Tatsumi told Neko icily, "I'll be her opponent if you want to force her to fight someone." Neko gave herself a sly smile. Was it foolish of this boy to wish to battle Haku by himself? Neko was well versed in Haku's jutsu. The crystal ice mirrors were her favorite. Neko remarked, "Very well. But just so you know, you've signed your very own death warrant," while Haku created a series of seals with one hand. Haku was surrounded by the rising water beneath the bridge. Haku calmly remarked, "Secret jutsu. 1,000 needles of death," as a massive amount of senbon was formed by the water. Tatsumi's eyes went wide, but not in a scared way. He anticipated the attack before it even occurred. He made the water senbon hit the bridge by leaping high into the air. Tatsumi saw that as soon as they hit solid ground, they immediately turned back into water. Tatsumi screamed, "Charge Seraphim!" as black lightning glowed on his sword. Tatsumi called out, "Stun charge!" as he swept the air before him, directing the lightning straight at Haku. He only wanted to remove his comrade from service, not kill her. Haku retreated, allowing the attack to hit only the bridge and a small body of water. Hinata and Karen were almost zapped by the lightning as it arced through the water. "Watch it!" Karen shouted at him, not in a rage. She was met with, "Sorry," from Tatsumi. Tatsumi didn't even wait a second after landing before launching himself at Haku. Tatsumi shouted to her, "Haku, you need to wake up." When Tatsumi spoke to Haku, she remained silent. She pulled a senbon in each hand and cross. Blocked with them just before Tatsumi could strike her with the flat of Seraphim. Tatsumi's partially completed Sharingan allowed him to easily avoid Haku's kick that was aimed at his stomach. Haku went on the offensive this time. After throwing her senbon at Tatsumi, she pulled more between her two fingers. Haku threw them at Tatsumi as soon as she had them drawn. Tatsumi jumped when he saw the first two coming. When he recalled that his teammates were behind him, he realized that was a mistake. Tatsumi hurled one kunai at each senbon after swiftly drawing two from his weapons pouch. Each senbon was hit by the kunai, which knocked them to the ground without causing any harm. But he was unable to block the next 8. Hinata did what anyone would do when she realized those senbon would not be diverted in time. She leapt in front of her teammates. With a soft fist stance, Hinata thought to herself, "Please work this time." She screamed, 8 trigram palm rotation, and started to spin wildly. A chakra shield developed around the wildly spinning object. All but 2 of the senbon were deflected off course when they hit the wall of spinning chakra. Hinata was only partially finished with the rotation technique. Thus, the shield had some holes in it. As Hinata turned back around, the 2 senbon that had not been deflected hit her in the chest. The rotation technique came to an abrupt end, and Hinata screamed in agony as she flew back several feet from the senbon's impact. The poison that the senbon carried was designed to cause excruciating pain for a brief moment. Karen was standing right behind Hinata when she flew back into her. They both collapsed onto their backs in a tangle of limbs in a heap. As Karen stood up and took the senbon off of Hinata's chest, Hinata kept shouting. In an attempt to numb the pain, Hinata thrashed her arms around her chest. Karen called out, "Support jutsu, pain suppression," and put her hand right where Hinata had been hurt. Hinata continued to grip her chest, but the pain was now tolerable to some extent. Tatsumi swore to himself that he was so foolish as to consider dodging in such a way. He would have to wait until later to apologize to Hinata. Haku was already preparing to strike him once more. Gosh, she's fast. Tatsumi thought to himself. I never expected such speed from her, as he deflected a senbon that was headed straight for his face. Come on over with Naruto. He uttered the words, damn it. I really hope I'm not too late, into zero. At that moment, a sound caught his attention and caused him to halt. His eyes were filled with passion. Astonishment, rage, incredulity, and above all, fear. Fear for the one he loves the most. Now that he was getting pretty close to the bridge, he accelerated his pace when he heard Hinata yelling in pain. To keep her safe, he had to go there. If the person he loved passed away right now, he wouldn't be able to live with himself. Tatsumi exclaimed, Arg, as a senbon struck his upper arm. Fortunately for him, it wasn't poisoned. Playtime is over, an icy Haku declared. Why am I unable to stop this? I don't want to engage in combat with my allies. Inside her head, Haku screamed. She paused for a moment, then started fighting again. Neko was not blind to this pause. She opposes the blood pact. Neko thought to herself, little brat. Haku called out, ice style. Ice rose jutsu. Just beneath Haku's feet, a rose formed of pure ice rose up from the ground, instantly making the air much colder. There were 15 petals total, and she said, now you will die, as she entered one of them. Almost immediately, Haku was replicated exactly in the other petals. When all of the ice rose's petals separated from the stem, Tatsumi halted his hasty attempt to smash the jutsu. Haku was facing Tatsumi on each petal. To encircle Tatsumi, they all moved in a circle. Haku was holding senbon in each hand. She threw them at Tatsumi, but he saw that they were real senbon and not illusions, and that the ice petals did the same. What on earth was this jutsu? Tatsumi tried to block every senbon, but one eventually hit him in the back of the knee. Soon after, more and more senbon pierced Tatsumi's flesh as they flew through his defenses. Tatsumi had senbon lodged in his arms, back, chest, and legs after Haku had completed the assault. He opened only one eye and panted heavily. His eye was slightly injured by a fortunate throw, but not severely enough to cause blindness. Later on, though, there would most likely be a scar there. With weakness, Tatsumi exclaimed, charge Seraphim. Black lightning wreathed the blade once more. Tatsumi yelled, Chidori Lightblade, as he launched the assault at the stem. Halfway through the assault, he had recognized that the stem was the petal's control unit. The real Haku jumped out of the stem before the attack happened. The stem broke into thousands of pieces as the lightning struck. The petals broke apart and did the same thing as a result of this. Then Tatsumi collapsed backward, holding Seraphim tightly. Haku's expression was emotionless as she watched him fall. No, in her mind, she screamed. Haku looked around and observed the other ninjas. Zabuza came forward this time. By saying, Haku, stop this, please, he hoped to free her from the jutsu. Zabuza sighed as Haku remained silent. He had to render her unconscious, but he could never kill her. He charged at her after drawing his sword in a one-handed grip. Zabuza was kicked away by a completely white foot just before he could get to her. The white creature said, I'll be your opponent, as he stood up. Zabuza grunted in agony as he collided with some supplies. He screamed angrily, why you? Who the hell are you? If you want to know someone's name, you should introduce yourself first, the man in white said. Something casually stated. Fine then, if you really want to know the name of your killer, so be it. I'm Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the hidden mist, he replied. That's good to know. I'm Zetsu, but not the real Zetsu. He's back at base. I'm merely a copy of him, said Zetsu. At that fact, Zabuza's eyes widened. Not the authentic one? Who, in the midst of combat, would just say that out loud? Zabuza didn't care. He was going to murder him right now. Then Zabuza sealed his hand quickly. He yelled, Hidden Mist Jutsu, as a massive cloud of mist fell onto the battlefield. Just so you know, I am a master of the silent killing technique, Zabuza said, emerging from the fog. Well, with you talking it doesn't sound very silent, Baka, said Zetsu. Directly behind Zetsu, Zabuza inquired, Hey, is that so? Zabuza was directly behind Zetsu, which startled him. He dodged a sword attack that would have easily cut him in two. Zetsu grinned and swung a kunai at Zabuza, saying, "This is going to be more fun than I had expected." Haku was advancing on the other members of the group. Rin was standing in front of her, his cherubim up, anticipating an assault. With Senbon in her hands, Haku charged. Rin was most taken aback by the attacker, not by how quickly the next attack came. Hinata was lying down, but she had risen. Her hands were glowing with chakra, and her Byakugan was activated. The Hyuga gentle fist had to be that. Rin had seen her mother use it so often before she left that she would recognize it anywhere. Hinata aimed her palm at Haku's torso and knocked the Senbon away. Before any significant harm could be done, Haku saw the attack and leapt back. Haku recalls sparring with Hinata once, despite being under the influence of a jutsu. A person could sustain severe physical harm as a result of that attack. Haku said, "I'm going to end this quickly," while creating a distinctive hand seal. She yelled, "Secret Jutsu! Crystal Ice Mirrors!" as 21 rectangular ice mirrors appeared seemingly out of thin air. Haku entered one of the mirrors after they had completed forming around Hinata. 20 more copies were immediately created on the other mirrors. Haku said, "Now that you have been trapped in this jutsu, you will die," and started to throw Senbon in a similar onslaught to the one in which she had previously trapped Tatsumi. Hinata shouted, 8 trigrams palm rotation, and started to spin quickly, encircling herself with a sphere of chakra. The chakra shield deflected the Senbon off it. However, not all of Hinata's Senbon were deflected because her jutsu was still incomplete. Hinata's arms and legs were stabbed by numerous of them as they started to squeeze through the openings. Hinata persisted in using her jutsu in spite of her pain. She stopped suddenly, however, as one Senbon slipped through the openings and stabbed her in the exact middle of her chest. It was another of those Senbons that were poisoned. The same poison was actually present in some of the ones that were in Hinata's flesh at the time, but the adrenaline was numbing the pain. She fell forward and screamed in pain once more. A Senbon was pointed directly at the base of her neck, where her neck and spine meet. As Tatsumi raised his head to watch his comrade fall and the Senbon fly in her direction, time seemed to drag on forever. In an attempt to calm Hinata, Rin and Karen called out to her. Hinata remained motionless in her position. "I apologize, Naru-kun." She mused to herself, "It looks like this is my end." Everyone there gasped at what came next. The Senbon melted. He was surrounded by a red aura, which startled them even more than the fact that they didn't even see him approach. Naruto bellowed menacingly, "Don't you dare lay another finger on Hinata." Chan. His eyes had turned red with pupil slits, and the 6-whisker shaped marks on his face had grown larger and darker. He had even sharpened his nails and teeth. Naruto growled at Haku, and the red aura whirled around him. Haku appeared frightened for the first time since the jutsu was used. Is that Naruto-kun? However, what became of the charming boy? This isn't him, Haku reflected. Tatsumi's Sharingan couldn't keep up with Naruto as he ran toward one of the mirrors. Naruto lifted his hand and used force to smash the mirror. Haku leapt out of one mirror and into another just before the clawed hand struck. To Haku's surprise, Naruto broke the mirror into a million pieces. As she threw a vial of red liquid at Haku, Neko thought evilly, this boy would be fun to use against his comrades. Haku nodded and picked up the vial. She opened the vial, sprayed it into Naruto's mouth, and then leapt out of the mirror the next time he approached her. Neko exclaimed, "Now, blood-pact control," as Naruto experienced the same daze that had engulfed Haku. Neko let out a wild laugh. She now controlled 2 of the most influential individuals. Naruto took a position next to Haku and gazed at his teammates with the same expressionless look that Haku wore. Neko commanded, "Kill them all," as Naruto and Haku positioned themselves for attack and then charge. As Naruto charged at Karen, Haku went for Rin. Rin screamed, "Charge Cherubim! Now stun charge!" as she charged directly at Haku. Haku ducked, but he didn't see Rin's boots wires hit her from below. They were carrying the same attack. The electricity jolted through Haku's entire system, causing her to scream. Haku gave Rin a feeble smile just before she fell. She said softly, "Thank you Rin-san," before collapsing to the ground. Rin grumbled, "What a nuisance that jutsu is," before turning to assist Karen. Neko suddenly materialized in front of her and punched her in the face, sending her flying back. Neko said perilously, "Don't even consider it, bitch. You're all going to die here." Rin got up and held Cherubim in a striking position, saying, "All right then." Before continuing to fight, the two ran at one another and locked weapons. Karen ducked beneath Naruto as he aimed a swipe at her head. Naruto was unrelenting, so their only option was to dodge. She had no choice but to dodge his constant attacks. Not knowing what an attack from Naruto could do in this state, Karen dared not block. Karen didn't realize a tiny pool of water was rapidly approaching as she kept dodging back. Tatsumi uttered, "S. Stop it. Naruto. Please," hardly audible above a whisper. With adrenaline pumping through his veins, he finally yelled, "Stop it. Stop it. Stop," as he stood up and charged at Naruto. Karen took a final step backward, slipping and falling backward onto the puddle. As Naruto pointed his claws at her throat, she watched in horror. Though she never felt it, she closed her eyes and waited for the inevitable. When she opened her eyes, she saw Naruto's clawed hand protruding from his back and Tatsumi standing in front of her. She yelled, "Tatsumi-kun. No," as he turned to give her a small smile. As she witnessed the stabbing of the boy she had fallen in love with, tears started to fall down her cheeks. Then she recoiled at what transpired. Tatsumi was being affected in the same way by the red aura that had grown over Naruto. No. This is not possible. Inside Tatsumi's head, Larka let out a scream. Tatsumi's sharpest teeth grew significantly longer, and his hands developed Naruto like claws. With the exception of the pupil, his eyes followed Naruto's movements. In the direct center, it was a 3-point star. To Karen's surprise, Tatsumi was also developing a real tail behind him. And his ears were starting to resemble wolves. They were on top of his head, covered in black fur, rather than on the side. Grabbing Naruto's arm, Tatsumi yanked it away from his shoulder. It was a quick healing of the wound. Then he hurled Naruto in the direction of a stack of bulky steel beams. Naruto screamed in agony as he collided with them. Tatsumi then gave Naruto a smile, but it wasn't a joyful one. It was wicked, utterly wicked. What Karen's eyes were seeing was unbelievable. She didn't learn this about Tatsumi from her Kekkei Genkei. His chakra had turned entirely evil and dark, and his only option was to kill. Naruto turned to Tatsumi and sneered angrily as he got to his feet. Karen needed to clear the path of the bridge builder and her allies because the next battle would be extremely lethal. With hatred in their eyes, Naruto and Tatsumi turned to face one another. In Tatsumi's instance, it was hate, but more evil than hate. Then Tatsumi started laughing malevolently. Karen had never heard anything so horrifying. Although it wasn't the Tatsumi she knew, she was aware that it was Tatsumi in front of her. His body and mind had been overtaken by something. Tatsumi never took his eyes off Naruto as he uttered, "Damn, does it feel good to be somewhat free at last." He sounded too joyful for someone who had such a sinister and intimidating appearance. As the sense of evil washed over her, Karen trembled where she lay. That feeling wasn't unique to her. Rin sensed it as she stopped Neko's kunai. As Neko ducked beneath one of Rin's swings, she sensed it. Because Zetsu was paralyzed by the sense of evil, Zabuza was able to use the guillotine blade to end his life. Before he could swing his blade, Zabuza almost faltered. He turned to see Tatsumi and Naruto facing each other after the attack landed. When he saw the two boys with their red auras surrounding them, his eyes widened. They appeared to be even more lethal than Zabuza was during his time as an assassin in the Hidden Mist. The girls who were unconscious were being awakened by the perilous auras. Hinata was the first to awaken. Some of the senbon fell out of her, and she moaned as she sat up. Hinata winced because she was still in pain. Then she heard a very dangerous growl and was struck by a blast of wind. Naruto was leaping through the air at Tatsumi when she turned her head. When Naruto's fist smashed Tatsumi's face and sent him flying, she gasped. But then she heard something that chilled her to the core. Tatsumi stood as though he was unfazed by the punch and asked, "Is that seriously all you have, kid?" At this point, Haku awoke and gasped upon seeing Naruto. Earlier, when she was under the influence of the blood-packed jutsu, she saw him covered in the red aura. She could actually see what was happening now. At the moment, the only feeling she could experience was fear. Until she saw Tatsumi, that is. Tatsumi sneered at Naruto and then vanished, saying, "You're pathetic. And you're supposed to be the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi." Huh? Tatsumi reappeared ahead of Naruto and kicked him in the chin. Tatsumi appeared right above Naruto as he shot into the air, punching him back to the ground. A crater was made in the bridge by Naruto's impact. Naruto shook his head and coughed up blood. With the jutsu broken, Naruto wondered what the hell happened. Naruto's inner Kyuubi said, "Good you're awake, kid." "Kurama, what's happening?" Naruto questioned himself. "You had a jutsu, and now Tatsumi is acting irrationally. I have no idea why. He might have done so when he touched my demonic chakra, but that's only conjecture." When a wave of evil struck Naruto, he looked up. With Seraphim aiming to cut Naruto in two, Tatsumi was hurtling down toward him at terrifying speeds. Just before Tatsumi hit the ground, Naruto leapt away. "So you've regained your consciousness. Good, then it will be a whole lot better for me when I kill you," Tatsumi said with a wicked grin. Naruto shouted, "Tatsumi, you need to wake up out of that," at him. "Wait. Do you think I'm Tatsumi?" Tatsumi began to laugh, which quickly turned into an uncontrollable fit of giggles. "I'm not Tatsumi. I may be using his body, but I'm actually the 10. Tails portion from Larka. You see, there are 10 Biju out there, and each one of them is merely a portion of me," Tatsumi said with a wicked grin. "Naruto, he's not lying. Each of us possesses a part of the 10. Tails chakra," Kurama informed Naruto. "Damn it," swore Naruto. "Then I'll just have to wake you up myself." Naruto made a series of hand seals and charged at Tatsumi. Wind style. Severing wind. He yelled as he leapt into the air, and a red chakra infused blade of wind blasted from Naruto's arm. "Like I said earlier, pathetic," Tatsumi said, raising his hand to grasp the wind blade. He hurled it in the direction of Rin and Neiko. When it approached and just missed them, the two of them gasped. Neiko became angry. She screamed, "You asshole! That nearly hit me," and rushed towards Tatsumi. Tatsumi gripped Neko's throat with an iron while keeping his gaze fixed on Naruto. Neiko attempted to break Tatsumi's hold by grabbing his arm. Tatsumi said, "You're in my way, woman," and hurled Neiko into a stack of steel beams. One of the beams crushed her leg, and she screamed in agony. Tatsumi turned to face her and said, "Actually." Tatsumi turned to her and grinned wickedly, saying, "You have quite a lovely voice when you scream." Tatsumi, who had completely forgotten about Naruto, came up to Neiko, who shuddered in terror. However, Naruto leapt in front of Tatsumi and punched him just before he got to her. Tatsumi's face made contact with Naruto's fist. The last punch would have normally sent Tatsumi flying, but this time he hardly moved his head. Tatsumi said, "That hurt, kid," turning back to Naruto. With a sly smile, Tatsumi swiftly grabbed Naruto by the throat. After absorbing the red chakra that was covering Naruto, Tatsumi threw him at Rin. Before they hit the ground, Rin grabbed him. Tatsumi turned back to Neiko and grinned evilly. "Thanks for the snack, kid," he said. When he whispered to her, "And now it's time for you to die." Neko's wide, terrified eyes watched him. Desperately, Neiko said, "Please don't kill me," she was shaking in terror. Tatsumi said, "Too late," as he pierced her stomach with his sword. When Tatsumi said, "You won't die right away, but it'll be painful," she burst out laughing. Just behind him, a soft voice said, "Tatsumi." He sensed someone's arms encircling him. This made him stop laughing and his face took on a puzzled expression. The person repeated, "Please stop this. You are a good person. I know you are." When Tatsumi looked back, he saw Karen burying her face in his back. Because she was so close to him, Tatsumi could feel her sobs even though they were hardly audible. Tatsumi turned to face her and raised his sword to slay her, saying, "You are a foolish girl. Now die." Tatsumi swung his sword down and cried out. As the attack came at Karen, time seemed to drag on forever. However, a kick to Tatsumi's chest just prior to the attack sent him flying. Naruto screamed, "Wake up, Tatsumi!" and charged him. After landing on her hands and knees, Tatsumi leapt to her feet and confronted Naruto. While running, Naruto created 4 shadow clones. As the 5 Narutos came closer, Tatsumi scoffed and said, "Ooh. Shadow clones, huh?" He readied himself to strike, but before he could swing Seraphim, he was ambushed by another shadow clone who caught him from behind. Tatsumi snarled, "What the hell? With rage, the shadow clones then launched their assault. Tatsumi sustained a barrage of kicks and punches. Tatsumi soon became weary of this and escaped the clone's hold. In order to make Seraphim vanish in a cloud of smoke, he turned him around and stabbed him in the chest. Then he sliced all the clones across their chests and charged Seraphim with electricity. The actual Naruto had now leapt into the air and was traveling directly toward Tatsumi. Due to his other commitments, he was unable to stop this attack. As the real Naruto got closer, the final clone vanished in a cloud of smoke. Naruto said, "It's time to wake up," while giving Tatsumi a headbutt. The blow caused them both to flinch, but Naruto bounced back fast and charged once more, putting his knee in Tatsumi's stomach. Naruto slammed his head into Tatsumi's face once more after raising it to make the two faces level. Naruto screamed, "Wake up, Tatsumi!" as he butted Tatsumi's head again, causing extensive bleeding on both of them. Tatsumi screamed, "Damn you, kid," as Naruto struck him in the face. Naruto gave another headbutt and yelled, "I'm not gonna let you harm anyone else, bastard 10. Tails." Naruto found himself in a cave all of a sudden. Naruto exclaimed, "What the hell is this? Genjutsu?" "You're in Tatsumi's mind, Naruto," the Kyuubi said to Naruto. "You seem more friendly now than you were before," Naruto told him. "Don't push your luck, kid. I just want to get rid of the 10. Tails," Kurama growled. "I believe you do, but I also think that there's more to it than that." Naruto began to walk down the cave. "There's no other reason," Kurama shouted. As Naruto descended the cave, he simply shrugged. A light was approaching him every minute. Naruto soon saw a beach as the cave began to fill with light. Naruto said, "What the hell is this?" to no one in particular. His eyes scanned the scene before him. It was the ideal temperature, neither too hot nor too cold. A light wind blew in his direction, filling his nostrils with the aroma of salt water. Voices were also carried by the breeze. They were his teammates, Naruto knew. He gradually started to identify each of his friends in the water as he made his way from the cave to the beach. Naturally, they were all dressed in swimwear. When Naruto saw Hinata in a purple bikini, he flushed. Karen and she both looked great in it. She was wearing a bikini, but it was pink, and he couldn't help but admire her body despite the fact that they were cousins. "Yo Naruto!" Tatsumi exclaimed, causing Karen to scream as he threw her into the water. "Tatsumi! You jerk!" Karen shouted at him in jest as she surfaced again, dousing him in water. When Naruto reached the water, he asked in confusion, "What are you guys doing?" As the three of them landed, Tatsumi asked, "What's it look like?" The sight of the water dripping off the girls made Naruto flush. Hinata gave him a giggle. Karen wiped her face with a towel and started to dry her hair before asking, "You alright, Naruto?" "I'm fine," said Naruto hastily. "What's going on here? Weren't we just on a mission in the land of waves?" Tatsumi cried out, "Where have you been? We completed that mission months ago. This is our vacation time." Naruto's blush deepened as Hinata approached him and put her arms around him. She drooled, "Come into the water with us, Naru-kun." "I can't," Naruto said, shaking his head. He then turned to look at Tatsumi. "You need to wake up out of this dream." "What dream?" "This is real," Tatsumi said with a confused look on his face. "It's a genjutsu, Naruto. Be careful," the Kyuubi warned. "Got it," Naruto replied. "Fine then. I'll make you wake up," he said as he made a few hand seals. Before he could finish the last one, the girls grabbed his wrists and pulled them away from each other as Tatsumi suddenly had his sword pointed at Naruto's throat. "You never learn, do you, kid?" Tatsumi said. "Oh well. I guess I'll have to teach you the hard way." Tatsumi raised his sword and brought it down at Naruto's neck. Before the blade struck, Naruto yanked Karen towards him and pushed her into Tatsumi, making the attack strike nothing but air. Naruto then, with his free hand, grabbed Hinata by the wrist and threw her away from him. Naruto made the same set of hand seals, this time finishing them. "Genjutsu release!" Naruto yelled. The beach disappeared along with the girls. They were now standing back in the forest that was Larka's realm inside of Tatsumi. Tatsumi stood up, no longer wearing his swim shorts but back in his ninja gear. "Damn you," he said to Naruto. "Release Tatsumi, you bastard!" Larka said from out of nowhere as a giant paw smashed the ground where Tatsumi had just been standing before he jumped away. Naruto looked up and saw her glaring at Tatsumi. "Not on your life," Tatsumi said casually. As she started to gather chakra around her muzzle, Larka gave a menacing growl and curved all 9 of her tails in the direction of the chakra gathering location. Above Larka's head, red and blue chakra orbs were merging into a huge, dense black ball. The chakra ball shrank to the size of a basketball after it had grown to be much larger than Larka. After opening her mouth to swallow the ball, Larka turned to face Tatsumi. With a shout, "Take this, tailed beast ball," she hurled the chakra directly at Tatsumi. Tatsumi simply lifted his hand and grasped the chakra ball in his palm. Tatsumi said, "Using my own attack against me? You should know better than that," as his tone completely changed. As Larka and Naruto listened to him, they felt a sense of dread because it was much deeper now. At this point, his eyes had turned red instead of purple. Nor is it the red of the tailed beast cloak or the Sharingan. They were demon-like. His entire eye was covered in a dark red, with no pupil. Naruto observed Tatsumi spinning the ball of chakra that had been hurled at him earlier. Naruto screamed, "Wind style," severing wind, and hurled a wind blade at Tatsumi. He raised his hand, but he never felt the jutsu connect. Naruto's target was the tailed beast ball he was holding, not Tatsumi. Naruto vomited blood after the wind blade struck the ball and caused a huge explosion that sent him hurtling back into a tree. A fair amount of forest was crushed as Larka landed after being knocked on her back. As he was launched into the air, Tatsumi naturally felt the full force of the attack. When Naruto looked up, he saw Tatsumi quickly drop back to the ground without landing. A dark chakra started to seep out of Tatsumi, causing him to stop a few feet above the ground. Above Tatsumi, the dark chakra began to concentrate in one spot. When it was done, Tatsumi collapsed to the floor. The largest monster Naruto had ever seen started to take shape from the dark chakra. It turned into a slim-bodied beast with a single enormous eye. Its arms and legs were long and thin. There were 10 enormous tails behind it. Additionally, it was entirely black save for the eye, which was red, which added to the evil aura emanating from it. "I will destroy the both of you," the 10 tails snarled malevolently. "There's no way you will be able to help in this fight," Larka said, getting back up on her paws. "Naruto, get Tatsumi and get back." With a nod, Naruto sprinted toward Tatsumi, who was standing right beneath the 10 tails. The 10 tails remarked, "I don't think I'm gonna let you do that, kid," upon witnessing Naruto sprinting towards Tatsumi. It swung at Naruto with one of its arms raised. In order to give Naruto time to reach Tatsumi, Larka swiftly caught the arm in her mouth. Tatsumi Larka threw the 10 tails away from them as Naruto got closer. "You are merely a small chunk of the real 10 tails power. I'm going to have no problem destroying you," Larka growled at him. Larka started to charge up another tailed beast ball and said, "And also for what you did to Tatsumi. That I cannot forgive." After landing on his feet, the 10 tails charged chakra into his hands and pointed them at Larka. As Larka launched her attack at him, the 10 tails snarled, "Die," and hurled the chakra beams in his hands at her. The two assaults collided and detonated in midair. Almost immediately after the explosion, Larka sprang forward, already preparing a smaller attack. She attacked the gullible 10 tails after she had cleared the smoke. The 10 tails crashed into the forest after her attack exploded in his face. After landing, Larka took off again and headed directly for the 10 tails. Her back paws fell on 10 tails' legs as she slashed at his stomach with her claws. As she started to build up a lot of smaller attacks, her claws dug deep into his stomach. As she started attacking the 10 tails, she pinned his arms down. Every attack exploded when it struck. The attacks primarily targeted his face, arms, chest, and stomach. Larka then launched a huge, multi-tailed beast ball into the air. Larka screamed, "Take this, you bastard!" Tailed beast ball, as she launched the attack directly at the 10 tails. He attempted to block, but the blow hit his chest before he could do so. Naruto was knocked on his back by the shockwave from the devastating explosion. Glaring into the smoke, Larka fell back to the ground. When it cleared, the 10 tails were standing there, glaring back at her. The 10 tails started to fade away, saying, "You bitch. I'm gonna destroy you when I become whole again." Then the 10 tails vanished entirely. "And you better watch Kurama, kid. I'm going to destroy him too." Larka let out a sigh. "I no longer sense him here inside of Tatsumi's body. He's gone. But I should warn you, Naruto. There's a portion of him inside of Kurama that we will need to destroy. It shouldn't be a problem once there will be two-tailed beasts there next time." Naruto gave a nod. "So does this mean that the real Tatsumi is awake now?" Naruto inquired. "Yes. He's out of the trance. You should get back there to him." Naruto closed his eyes and said, "All right, then. I'll see you again when we destroy the 10 tails inside of Kurama." He had just finished headbutting Tatsumi when he reopened them. Returning to his feet, Naruto observed Tatsumi. Tatsumi massaged his head after Naruto had given him a headbutt. He exclaimed, "OWW, what the hell happened?" Naruto sat on the ground, exhausted, and sighed. "Good, the 10 tails no longer has control of you," he replied. Tatsumi questioned, "Huh? The 10 tails had control over me?" Naruto nodded and opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted when Karen collided with Tatsumi and sobbed while pressing her face against his chest. She slammed her fists into his chest and yelled, "Never do something like that again." She needed to vent and he was the ideal candidate, but she wasn't really trying to hurt him. "I thought you were gone from us completely." Tatsumi encircled her with his arms and embraced her. "I'm never gonna let something like that happen again. I promise." Even though I have no clue as to what happened after Naruto stabbed me through the chest with his claws. Naruto said, "We'll tell you later. Right now you have a bigger problem, Tatsumi," as he gave Tatsumi his first detailed examination. Tatsumi's face took on a bewildered expression. He questioned, "What problem is that?" Naruto merely gestured toward his own head. Tatsumi's hand shifted over his head. Tatsumi felt the ears and screamed, "What are talking abo? What the hell is that?" Evidently, they were ears that came with more than just the transformation, they were permanent. Tatsumi-kun. You also have another problem. Look behind you, Karen advised. When Tatsumi looked over his shoulder, he noticed a dark tail idly swishing back and forth. Tatsumi questioned, "Is that is that a tail?" Tatsumi looked back at Karen, who gave him a nod. Tatsumi nodded, his expression strange. "Wolf ears and tail. I'm okay with this," said the man. Before Tatsumi blew up, the three of them were quiet for a short while. "I have a wolf's tail and ears. What the hell?" Karen chuckled at his response. "It doesn't look bad, Tatsumi," she said, attempting to convince him of their positive qualities despite the fact that they appeared extremely strange on a human. Naruto now got to his feet and surveyed the area. He hurried over to Hinata as soon as he saw her. He knelt down next to her and asked anxiously, "Hina-chan, are you alright?" In an attempt to sound better than she truly felt, she said, "I'm alright, Naru-kun. Just a few scratches is all." Naruto asked her, his voice full of worry, "Are you sure?" Hinata just nodded while attempting, but failing, to smile. She started to fall forward, her vision becoming blurry. Fortunately, Naruto had already arrived to capture her. He gave her a little shake and held her in bridal style. He nearly screamed, "Hinata?" in an attempt to wake her. Haku informed him, "She's just unconscious, Naruto-kun," as she came over with a severe limp. "Here. I'll heal her," Haku said when she knelt down and put her hands on Hinata's chest after performing a few hand seals. Slowly but steadily, her wounds started to heal. Haku told Naruto, "If you'd like, I can heal you too," while he was watching. Without taking his eyes off Hinata, Naruto remarked, "I'll be alright. Because of the Kyuubi sealed inside me, I heal pretty fast." Smiling and looking up, Naruto said, "But thank you, Haku-chan." "Okay," Haku said, grinning back at Naruto. She liked his face, particularly the lines that resembled whiskers. Aside from his blue eyes, that was, for some reason, her favorite thing about Naruto. Haku gave a small shake of her head and returned her focus to Hinata. He has a crush on her. As one tear trickled down her cheek, Haku thought to herself, "I wish it could be me, but anyone could see that these two were meant for each other." She detested these feelings. "At least you're not in critical danger," she replied. Naruto reassured him, and if I was, you'd be one of the first people I would ask to heal me. After hearing his remark, Haku grinned broadly and carried on healing Hinata. Now that they were back together, Karen was attempting to reassure Tatsumi about his new tail and ears, but it wasn't working. Calm down, Tatsumi. I have to heal you, Karen nearly screamed at him. How can I relax? I have wolf ears and a tail. I look like a fool because of them, Tatsumi said. With a sigh, Karen gave him a Rin Sensei style slap on the back of his head, saying, "Come on down here." She yelled at him this time. Tatsumi was caught off guard when she yelled at him. He quietly obeyed and sat down in front of her. She pulled up her sleeve and put it in front of Tatsumi. "Here. Bite," she said. "What?" Tatsumi looked up at Karen-chan and said, "I won't bite you. I heal people in this way," she said. "Now bite hard enough to draw blood." Tatsumi grudgingly followed her instructions, but not before giving Karen a look that made him wonder what he was doing, which she ignored. He bit down on her arm and drew blood, and immediately felt better as his wounds were healed. Karen closed her eyes, and every time she used this power, she felt good. Her face flushed as the sensation intensified with each second, and she groaned a little, which caused Tatsumi to release his bite on her. "Are you okay?" With concern, he inquired. "Yeah." Karen was almost addicted to the feeling, which made her feel, well, you get the idea. And insert the, if you know what I mean, meme here. Haha, I'm F. Fine, she said, trembling from the feeling. "Are you certain?" Tatsumi noted. "You appear to have a slight fever." Karen shook her head and grinned. "I'm all right," she informed him. "Okay then," Tatsumi said as he rose to his feet, slowly swishing his tail. "How did your fight go?" Zabuza asked, returning to Rin, who was observing her subordinates and couldn't help but chuckle at her brother's new look. Zabuza walked up to her and asked. Rin looked at him and said, "It was all right," until Tatsumi lost her mind. Rin gestured toward a stack of metal beams and said, "Neko is over there." "I'll be right back," Zabuza said as he started to walk to his former student, and when he arrived, she looked up at him. Zabuza turned to see Neko holding her stomach where Tatsumi had stabbed her. Zabuza. Sama. Neko uttered while inhaling sharply. "Neko. What happened to you?" Zabuza squatted down and asked. "You gave Haku more attention than I did," she remarked icily. "I apologize, Neko. I wish I could have spent more time with you." Zabuza told her, "I would change the past if I could." "Hey. That's a funny thought," Neko said, adding, "I don't regret what I did. Anyhow, I'm going to die soon. My mission was unsuccessful." "At least you can still die with some dignity left," Zabuza told her, attempting to console his former pupil whenever possible. "That child's beating of me lacked dignity. I was tossed about like a rag doll by him. There wouldn't be any dignity left for anyone." After a brief silence, Neko laughed at the last statement, but at least he gets to feel his pride stabbed with that ridiculous tale. Zabuza. Sama. I appreciate everything you did. As she closed her eyes for the final time in her life, a single tear trickled down her cheek. "I'm glad I got to die after I told you that." "Rest peacefully, Neko," Zabuza said, bending his head and silently praying as Neko's life vanished. Zabuza got up and turned to return to Rin when he sensed a menacing presence nearby. Tatsumi's ears perked up. "Something's coming," he said, turning to see what was going on. He gasped when he saw that everyone's attention was on the new arrival. So these fucking ninjas are still here after Neko's disastrous failure. Gato, who stood in front of 100 or so thugs, all brandishing some kind of weapon, remarked, "Pathetic." "Gato," Rin spit out. "Waiting for the bridge builder to be killed gets old to me. I will now observe it with my own eyes," he mocked the ninja group. Zabuza said, "Not if I have anything to say about it," as he moved to face the sizable group of men. The thugs all chuckled. My, aren't we brave? Or extremely foolish? In either case, I don't care. You're going to die right here," Gato chuckled. "He's not the only one who will stop you," Rin said as she moved up next to Zabuza, raising her sword. Zabuza grinned and pulled out his own sword. "Will you join me in this dance of death?" He bowed slightly and extended his hand to Rin as he asked. She curtsied back, "You may," and took his hand. "Will a room be provided for you too?" Tatsumi shouted at them from his position. Rin shouted back, "Shut up, Baka." Rin and Zabuza watched the thugs, anticipating their next move. Zabuza remarked, "Well, if you aren't gonna come at us." Rin concluded, "Then we are gonna come at you," and then he charged at the thugs, with Zabuza trailing behind. "Death them!" As the gang of thugs charged at the two ninjas who were attacking, Gato yelled. "Cherubim, charge!" Rin shouted, "Lightning sweep," as white lightning engulfed her blade. Zabuza leapt up and over the lightning as he brought his sword down into a man's shoulder, slicing him in half from shoulder to opposite hip. The two of them stabbed and sliced at every enemy in a very coordinated fashion. She called, swinging her blade in front of her. As she did, the lightning arced through the air and struck a group of thugs directly in front of her, stopping their hearts in an instant. "Shall we go assist them?" Naruto, who was now holding the unconscious Hinata bridal style, asked as he and Haku approached Tatsumi, Karen, and Tazuna. "No, everything appears to be under control thanks to Nachan and Zabuza.san. Tatsumi declared, "Almost half of those thugs are already dead." Some of the thugs managed to get past the two deadly ninjas and were on their way directly to the Genin group. "Haku, could you please hold Hinata? Are you prepared for this, Tatsumi?" Naruto asked, and Haku nodded before removing Hinata from his embrace. The two of them pulled out their weapons and charged at the small group of thugs, Tatsumi popping his neck and saying, "Oh yeah. Charge Seraphim." Black lightning swept across Tatsumi's blade. Naruto summoned his jutsu and created a set of hand seals. Severing wind. Two unfortunate thugs were instantly killed when the wind blades from the kunais in his hands struck them in the chest. The light blade of Chidori. Tatsumi leapt at another and stabbed him in the neck as he used Naruto's shoulder as a stepping stone to slice the guy directly behind the one Naruto just killed. Tatsumi landed on a thug's chest, driving Seraphim into his heart as he did. He then leapt back, performed a backflip, and landed back by Naruto. Tatsumi shouted, stabbing one guy's chest with his sword and stabbing another right behind him with the Chidori. "This is how they keep coming." Naruto snarled and hurled several shuriken at one of the thugs who were approaching. The thug was knocked onto his back after all three of the shuriken struck him in the chest. Tatsumi and Naruto stood back, and he said, "Yeah, no kidding," as the thugs surrounded them. One of them ran and swung his katana at Tatsumi's tail, which Tatsumi pulled back just before it struck. "Hey, no one feels the tail." The two of them proceeded to chop and dice the thugs as they approached until only two remained, both of them towering over Tatsumi and Naruto and brandishing giant hammers. Tatsumi shouted as he kicked the thug in the chest, crushing a few ribs before slicing Seraphim across his chest. "How is that saying going, Tatsumi?" "The larger they are," smirked Naruto. Both thugs fell dead as a doornail after Tatsumi finished, the harder they fall, as they both ran and ducked under the hammer swings. Tatsumi squatted down and cut the legs closest to him on both thugs. Naruto then used Tatsumi as a jumping platform to soar into the air and threw kunai into each thug's necks. "Too easy," Naruto uttered upon landing. Tatsumi sneered, "I was expecting more of a challenge," and turned to see Rin and Zabuza murdering the final thug in the vicinity of Gato. In a matter of minutes, all of Gato's men were killed, and he fled in terror. "Stay back." As the two ninjas came toward him, he screamed. "Hold Cherubim in a stabbing position," Rin said, "for almost killing my subordinates." Zabuza said, "And for using Neko like a tool you can just throw away like trash, while using one hand to raise his blade high into the air. This is where you'll perish." When Rin and Zabuza finished together, they charged at Gato, who was paralyzed with fear. Rin stabbed Gato in the chest with her sword and leapt to avoid Zabuza's blade, which was aimed at Gato's waist. Zabuza sliced Gato in two as Rin freed Cherubim from Gato's chest, and she landed gracefully on Zabuza's sword after it sliced through Gato. Telling Rin, "That was quite the dance," Zabuza said. "Didn't you find it entertaining?" She smiled at Zabuza and asked. Tatsumi shouted, "Get a room," at them. "Baka!" Rin shouted at him, and everyone regrouped as Naruto retrieved Hinata from Haku. Rin laughed and said, "Nice tail by the way, little brother." "Stop talking, Teme." Karen put her arms around Tatsumi's arm as she shot back. "How is everyone else on the bridge construction team doing?" Tazuna was asked by Zabuza. "I took them all over there to the shade overhang while you were all fighting," Tazuna replied. "Good." Zabuza nodded. Tatsumi yawned. "I need a nap," she said. Rin informed him, "When we're done up here, we'll rest." "I'm glad you're okay," he said, turning to face Karen after nodding. He said to her, "If I had lost you, I don't know what I would have done." "I'm not gonna leave your side, Tatsumi-kun," Karen said with a smile, embracing his arm closer to her. Tatsumi gave her a corny smile while swishing his tail in a joyful motion. When Tatsumi saw the swishing, he said, "There's no way I will ever be able to get used to this damned tail," and everyone chuckled. The next few weeks flew by as the bridge was finished being built. For the first week all the genins stayed at Tazuna's house while Rin and Zabuza went to the bridge to be guards. The two of them had grown quite fond of each other over the course of this journey. Tatsumi and Naruto slept for well over a week while Karen, Hinata, and Haku only slept for a few days. Once they were all awake, Naruto told Tatsumi about the 10 tails and what needed to be done to remove him from Kurama. The girls were all shocked to hear of such a creature. Worry was over all three of their faces as Naruto and Tatsumi sat across from each other, their fists bumped so Tatsumi could enter Naruto's mind. The battle to remove the 10 tails from Kurama was very quick. The two twin 9-tailed beasts made short work of the 10 tails portion inside of Kurama. This battle also resulted in the destruction of the seal that held the Kyuubi inside of Naruto. But Kurama decided he liked having Naruto as a partner, even though he would never admit it. Finally the bridge was finished and the group of ninja all stood at the side that was connected to the mainland. A good portion of the town was there to see them off. Naruto grinned at Inari, who grinned right back. The Leaf Shinobi and 2 rogue ninjas left the Great Naruto Bridge, a name that Inari thought up, and began to head back to the Hidden Leaf Village. The group dispersed as soon as they arrived in the Leaf Village, and Rin took Haku and Zabuza to the Hokage's office to register them as Leaf Shinobi and to give her mission report. Naruto went to his apartment and dropped off his bags before making his way to the Hyuga mansion to pick up Hinata, who changed into some casual clothes, still wearing her jacket and ninja armor, but with a sundress as a top and her headband around her neck. She ran out of the Hyuga mansion and met Naruto nearly there, grinning when he returned her, and then ran up to kiss him, her confidence having grown significantly since they first spoke. The two then started toward Ichiraku Ramen. To drop off his bags, Tatsumi went to his and Rin's apartment. He almost ran into Karen on his way to her own apartment, saying, "Wait, you live here too?" Tatsumi inquired. "I live another floor up," Karen said, nodding. "Do you want to enter? I can prepare lunch for you." Karen grinned as she escorted Tatsumi upstairs to her own apartment, opened the door, and proceeded to her room, placing her bag on her bed. Tatsumi grinned and joyfully swished his tail, saying, "I would love to." "What are your food preferences?" she questioned him. "Whatever you would like to cook," Tatsumi said with a smile. "All right." Karen returned his smile and started preparing lunch. "It's finished. We have nowhere left to go," a man said. He was kneeling in the middle of a battlefield, the battle long over with it seemed. All that remained now was death and corruption. He wore a gray kimono with another much shorter one and had no sleeves over it. The top one was a dark blue with a white outlining around the edges, and a sash that was wrapped around his waist served as a belt. It also held a sheath for his sword. The man had long dark hair and a thin headband that wasn't fully connected on his forehead wrapped around him. "This is it. This is where our road ends," he said in a shame-filled voice. He lay on the ground close to one of his comrades, exhausted from the ongoing battle. He was wearing a kimono of the same color, but half of it showed a black short-sleeved kimono underneath, with the right sleeve appearing to have been torn off. His hair was shorter and less dark. He had a small beard on his stern-looking face, and a necklace of rather large beads was around his neck. "It was a fool's decision, doomed from the start," he said, in a quiet, slightly raspy voice. "This marks the conclusion. We have to go back," a third man said, wearing a paid of gray pants with a robe over them, which was dark blue with a teal outline on the top and a white outline on the bottom. He had a hat over his head that made him appear taller than he actually was, with a simple cloth attached to it from ear to ear and around behind his head. His face was painted in white and red war paint, with the red covering his mouth, eyes, and part of his nose. There is a method. A woman, wearing a light green kimono with a gray sash tied around her waist, said, "Have faith." A sword protruded from the ground beside her, and beneath the kimono she wore gray pants and shinobi-style sandals. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail, and the wind blew lightly across the battlefield as she spoke. "I know that we will find it," she said confidently. As the first man put it, "But princess, you mustn't give up," she told them encouragingly, turning as she spoke, her green eyes displaying nothing but resolve. As he watched her, the second man said, "Princess." In an instant, the wind grew stronger as a storm formed behind a man in long, dark robes, his right hand holding a staff with two horns on top that appeared to be glowing from something, and his evil laughter filled the four people's ears. "Princess Gale, you can only go as far as this." A dozen or so twisters spun behind him as the man shouted over the wind. "Mao." In a kenjutsu stance, the first man took a katana in his hands, the second held a long spear with blades that looked like scythes underneath the spearhead, and the third wielded a rather large scimitar with practiced ease. "I said angrily," the first man said, rising to his feet as the other two followed suit, all three now brandishing their weapons. "Don't blame yourself for this storm," the third man shouted fiercely. A suit of armor that was resting on the ground suddenly rose and swung its sword at the princess, and Mao just snickered. Tatsumi shouts, "Watch out behind you, princess," out of the blue. As suits of armor start to rise up from the ground, all of them holding weapons and facing the group of four, Princess Gale swiftly and deftly sidesteps the attack, grabbing her longsword from the ground and holding it in a stabbing position before blasting the suit with wind, shattering it to pieces. "Suddenly I will not bow" by Breaking Benjamin plays in the background. "Give up, princess," Mao chuckles. "Get down on your knees and bow down to me, the world's rightful ruler." The princess said, "I will never give in to you," which made Mao give her a fierce look. "For as long as I live, I will gather my strength and forge a path for others to follow on." She spoke resolutely as a chakra started to flow around her, though this particular chakra appeared to glow in rainbow hues. A flare up is occurring in her rainbow chakra. "Shocked," the first man said. "My brothers," said the third man, turning to face the other two. "We also need to give the princess our chakra's power." "All right." The four of them now had their chakra flaring to life and fusing into the princess's next attack, while Mao had started to spit his staff around wildly, sending a dark attack at the group, sneering as he saw the attack coming quickly. The other two said this in unison as the three of them moved in front of Princess Gale to protect her. Rainbow chakra spun around the ground before converging into one spot, the blade that Princess Gale was wielding. She let out a fierce battle cry as she stabbed her sword forward aimed at Mao, sending the rainbow-coated attack straight at him, knocking him out of sight. Suddenly, the attack struck what appeared to be a wall of chakra, sending off large gusts of wind and knocking all the armor warriors to pieces. The four warriors stood watching the horizon as a rainbow appeared across the sky, and Tatsumi sat in awe, his eyes fixed on the scene unfolding before him. Tatsumi burst out laughing and yelled, "All right, you are in charge, Princess Gale." "What the hell are you doing up there?" a movie theater attendant exclaimed as she ran from a door and glanced up at the four ninjas perched on the ceiling. As the movie's soundtrack began to play, he screamed angrily. After losing his footing on the ceiling and landing hard on the floor, Tatsumi sat up and rubbed his head, asking, "What's the matter?" Angrily, he asked. "You dare not act foolishly around me. You all entered here covertly and without paying," the man shouted. "You don't get it now. While I was watching the film, I was working out." Tatsumi waved his arm in front of him to clarify. "What am I training for?" As the other three genin leapt from the ceiling, holding their tickets aloft, the man asked in confusion. "We have tickets," Karen declared. "What are these Leaf Village ninja doing here?" the moviegoer inquired. "As I mentioned before, we were getting some training in." A box of popcorn smashed into Tatsumi's face, interrupting him. At this point, other objects were also being thrown. "Stop talking." As more and more trash was thrown at the ninja, someone shouted. "Come on. Let's continue. Beyond the rainbow is where our fate awaits us." As trash continued to be thrown at the ninjas, Princess Gale said on the movie screen. The ninjas fled the theater quickly, running to an alley behind it and stopping at a wooden fence that was meant to be their meeting place with Rin to receive mission briefings. Karen leaned against the gate, which was also a part of the fence, while Naruto and Hinata sat on a few boards near the fence. Tatsumi sat on the ground, gazing up at the billboard for the movie they had just seen. "That was a great movie," he said with a smile, his tail swishing back and forth casually and his ears flapping to the side in a lazy manner. "You fool. Someone had to take us out, so we missed the entire event." From the other side of the yard, Naruto shouted. Tatsumi's ears perked up a little, annoyed that Naruto had interrupted his train of thought. "Oh, come on. She's not that pretty," Karen remarked, tapping her foot on Tatsumi's leg. "That's not my intention. I've never seen a better movie than that one," he told her. "I wonder why Rin Sensei wanted us to watch that movie before briefing us on our mission," Hinata remarked quietly as Karen simply scoffed and moved back to her position. "Who knows?" shrugged Naruto. A woman on a white horse suddenly leapt over the fence, and all four genins stood up when they heard the sound of hooves galloping on the other side of the fence. They were all startled to see Princess Gale from the movie they had just seen riding the horse. "Go after her." As the horse touched down, the gate flew open, sending Tatsumi rolling on the dirt and nearly knocking Karen down on the boards Naruto and Hinata were sitting on. A group of the movie's armored characters, led by an unknown person, passed through the gate. With his ears flat against his head, Tatsumi snarled, "That's it," before rushing after the group of men on horseback, he shouted. "Just behind you. Have faith." Karen shouted as she sprinted after him, and the two of them hurried up onto the rooftops, trailing the horses closely. "Guess we better go." Naruto and Hinata sighed together before setting off to find their friends. A net was thrown at Princess Gale, causing her to stop and rear her horse. Before the net reached her, it was torn apart by shuriken, all of which stuck in the ground. The princess urged her horse faster as she twisted through the street, and people screamed as they nearly got trampled by the white horse, which was soon followed by the other horses. Three of the men swiftly turned a corner to get in front of the princess, and soon they were in front of her. RRGH. Princess Gale took advantage of this brief distraction to dash past Tatsumi and the fallen guards after he growled and knocked one off his horse before leaping up and giving the other two guards a double roundhouse kick. "Follow her, the rest of us will provide a distraction," Karen said as she changed into the princess and used a genjutsu to create a white horse that looked like the real one, turning down a street in the opposite direction of the real princess. The guards followed Karen, while Naruto and Hinata followed closely behind them from the rooftops. They kept following the guards and princess. Naruto moaned, "Damn, these guys are persistent," as they reached a large flight of stairs from which Karen, in her transformation, leapt. Two of the guards threw two round bottles of what appeared to be oil at the ground below, which Karen actually landed on and slipped on, severely enraged her. She skidded a little on the ground. "Come on over." All the guards leapt from their horses and tackled the princess, who struggled a lot but was restrained by the weight of the men and their armor, when the man without any armor and glasses yelled, "Now we've got you." Naruto then appeared on his horse and struck him in the jaw, knocking him off his horse and straight into terra firma. The guards all looked up to watch the man fall before being knocked away themselves by the girl they believed to be the princess. Naruto was chilled by Karen's malevolent intent as she stood up, no longer resembling the princess. "You perverts." When the teammates started their attack, the Naruto clones held onto the guards while Karen and Hinata disabled them. Karen simply punched the guards hard, while Hinata used her gentle fist to numb their arms and legs. She yelled and kicked one guard square in the face before turning to the others. They all fell back, trembling, and then got up and fled, only to be confronted by Naruto's shadow clones and Hinata in her gentle fist stance. After they were finished, the genins tied up the guards. A voice called out to them as they were dusting off their hands. "What the hell are you guys doing?" Naruto felt a forceful blow to the back of his head as the voice became irritated. "Oh." Grasping his head with both hands, he winced. Shrugging, Karen said, "Killing time." Rin helped the man up and placed her hand behind her head, saying apologetically, "I'm really sorry about all this Sandayu.san," as all of the ropes that had the guards and the man with the glasses tied were suddenly severed. "Huh?" Together, Naruto and Karen exclaimed, and as Hinata stepped beside Naruto, her expression was bewildered. Rin bowed to the young ninja, who all had horrified expressions on their faces. This is the man that hired us for our mission, Rin explained. Oh, said Naruto. Damn, Karen said, completing the sentence. The three of them bowed their heads to the locals. We apologize, we were unaware. In unison, they all apologized. Sandayu laughed and waved their apologies away, saying, that is unnecessary. He looked at them for a moment, then said, they will do well protecting her. But wasn't there a fourth one? I understand how it looked and I apologize myself for it. The three of them looked up at the man who was grinning kindly at them. Sandayu inquired. Oh, indeed. That baka is where? Rin looked around and asked. With her horse sipping water next to her, Princess Gale sat by a pond with her knees up to her chest, her arms wrapped around them, and her chin resting on them. Are you okay? Tatsumi asked from out of nowhere. Princess Gale barely turned her head to see who it was. Wow. It's you. I just watched your film, and you were fantastic. Tatsumi cried out. After giving him a disinterested glance, Princess Gale mounted her horse and rode off, crashing Tatsumi into the pond. Watch it, he yelled and quickly began to follow her. Soon he was running alongside of the horse. Wait up, he yelled to her. She only urged her horse faster. It pulled away from Tatsumi despite his best efforts to keep pace. Damn it, Tatsumi said to himself before charging his feet with lightning chakra. Lightning style. Quick dash. Tatsumi uttered those words as his speed grew tenfold, enabling him to effortlessly pass the horse and use his Sharingan. He locked eyes with the horse using his partially active dojutsu, and then the horse's gaze suddenly shifted to the Sharingan, stopping its movements completely inches from Tatsumi. I'm just here to talk to you, lady, Tatsumi sighed. What child? Angrily, Princess Gale asked. Regarding the reason behind those men's pursuit of you, but why were they? Tatsumi asked. It's none of your business, she said, grabbing a spray can off her sleeve and dousing Tatsumi's eyes with it. As the spray struck him, Tatsumi screamed in pain, closed his eyes, and started frantically massaging them, saying, What the hell is this? He shouted. She said plainly, pepper spray for people like you who get in my way, and pushed her horse away from Tatsumi and into town. Tatsumi found a bucket of water quickly and rubbed his eyes while submerging his entire head in it. Damn that woman! He shouted underwater, which he later realized was a bad idea after swallowing a big mouthful of water. He jumped out of the bucket and started coughing and hacking as he stepped back and fell off the road, fell into a pile of rocks, hit his head, and lost consciousness. You guys were great in the movie. Hinata and Karen sat staring at a wall covered in pictures of the movie set, most of which featured actress Yukie Fujikaze, also known as Princess Gale. Naruto just sat there listening to the director compliment Yukie on her acting skills, and then the three males from the film appeared, which made Karen squeal. She had to confess that she had a crush on the leader of them, but she would never tell Tatsumi that. She gave them praise. Thanks, said Sukeikiro, the first one, with a smile that nearly made Karen melt in her seat. While Naruto rolled his eyes at his cousin, Hinata simply shrugged. Wow, Hinata said, turning to face the pictures once more and focusing on a sizable glacier formation. Those glaciers are stunning, she remarked softly. That is the land of Snow's Rainbow Glacier. The second one, which was Shishimaru this time, said, that's where we are going to be shooting the final scene of the next movie. They say it's supposed to turn 7 different colors in spring. Hinata stared at the picture with wide eyes, wishing Naruto was by her side. That's an old legend, Rin said. In truth, the land of snow never has any spring. You mean that, Rin? Sensei, it's always winter? Naruto inquired. Exactly. She added, I've also heard that the previous ruler spent the majority of the fortune on useless gadgets, which is why the country is extremely impoverished. Was it Rin? From what I understand, you have visited the land of snow, the director inquired, receiving a nod from Rin. No, however, based on his statements, my former sensei has, and that was a long time ago, Rin stated. Did Yukie run this way all the time? Karen asked after she had somewhat recovered her composure. No, the others nodded in agreement as Sukeikiro stated, she didn't start acting like this until she learned that we were going to the land of snow. Well, I must speak with Kakashi prior to our departure tomorrow. I would like to take a moment to apologize. Hinata, Karen, and Naruto. Go look for Yukie and Tatsumi. Before vanishing in a cloud of smoke, Rin remarked, It won't matter if Tatsumi misses the boat, but we can't have Yukie miss it. The Leaf Genin all got up and left the filming location. Those kids are going to be a problem, mused one of the assistants who had entered the conversation halfway through. I'll have to warn Dodo Sama soon. Kakashi. Sensei. What do you know about Yukie Fujikaze in the land of snow? As they stood on a roof just outside of town, Rin questioned her sensei. You mean the land of snow? Kakashi started. It's a country that experiences winter all year round. I haven't been there in a long time. Ruled by Dodo Kazahana, the late Sosetsu Kazahana's younger brother. In an attempt to embezzle the family fortune, Dodo engaged Snow Ninja to lead an uprising. His daughter was in danger of being killed, so I was sent in there to rescue her. I'm not sure what happened to her after that. Regarding Yukie Fujikaze, she is an actress who has gained a lot of popularity lately. There isn't much more to know about her than that. Everyone is kept in the dark about her past. Rin, why are you interested in all of this? I knew you had visited the land of snow before, and tomorrow my team and I are heading there. I wanted to know more about the situation. Do I need to prepare for any enemy ninjas? Probably, but I don't think so. They all wear chakra armor that absorbs the majority of ninjutsu and genjutsu, and they all use ice-style ninjutsu. The only real defense against their armor is taijutsu. Kakashi. Sensei, is there anything else I should know? The Hex Crystal is a gem that the enemy ninja might be pursuing if you run into them. Keep an eye out for it. Princess Koyuki Kazahana would be wearing it, if my memory is correct. Rin concluded, thank you sensei, and vanished. Kakashi said, be safe kiddo, after she vanished. As the sky grew dark, Tatsumi shook his head in exasperation as he searched the town for any sign of Yukie, walking for what felt like hours. Damn it. Tatsumi moaned, then looked up, looking directly into Yukie's eyes, saying, hey, found ya. It wouldn't matter if I missed the boat, but she needs to be on there before we leave. Princess Gale, tell me what made us go to the boat, Tatsumi said with a small smirk. She said, not a chance, and entered one of the local bars, followed by Tatsumi. She ordered a bottle of sake and sat at the bar, and Tatsumi sat next to her, looking around the room. Other than the two of them and the bartender, there was only one other man there, who was drinking in a corner with his back to them. So what about this? You'll come to the boat if I can outdrink you. If not, I'll stop following you, Tatsumi suggested. Are you drinking? Haha, Yukie chuckled and said, I would win right away, most likely, you're a lightweight child. Give me a try. I'll even cover the cost, Tatsumi said. She said, you're on brat, and poured 2 saucers of sake, downing hers quickly while Tatsumi drank his slowly. Rin's going to kick my ass for this, but whatever, Tatsumi thought to himself as he poured another drink for them both. They walked back and forth for a while, both of them with a matching number of drinks consumed. Yukie already red in the face and feeling very woozy, while Tatsumi maintained a straight face the entire time. The man at the back of the room got up, put his money on the counter, and then turned to leave the bar, keeping his face hidden as he walked slowly forward. Tatsumi ignored him as he went by, taking another drink, failing to notice that he glanced at Yukie's neck before heading for the door, which burst open as Naruto, Hinata, Karen, Rin, and Sandayu ran into the room. The man took note of their presence and quietly left. Before departing, the man reflected, 5 in all, huh? And 2 of them are Jinchuriki. Good. What are you doing, Tatsumi-kun? Karen asked as she approached him. He shrugged, enjoying a few drinks, that is. You've had how many? Quietly but somewhat dangerously, Rin asked. Tatsumi poured himself a drink and quickly drank it down, grinning at Yukie as he drank another, adding another to his total. I lost count about 8 drinks ago, Tatsumi said. Please, Yukie. Sandayu begged, we have to get to the boat tonight so it can depart first thing in the morning. Whatever, Yukie said with a shrug, I'm not a good actress. I mean, directors are even worse than the lead actresses, and they change from movie to movie. Sandayu's tirade interrupted her. Enough of that, he said, you have so much potential to waste it like that. She gave him a brief glance before taking another drink, which Tatsumi matched, and then taking another to take the lead. I think I'm ahead now, he remarked, his face beginning to flush from the alcohol. Yukie poured 2 drinks and drank them, saying, for now, brat, but she had to admit something. For a child, you drink quite a bit. That's because he's using a genjutsu on himself to keep from feeling the effects of the alcohol, Rin explained. What? You're cheating, Yukie yelled. Tatsumi said, you never said I couldn't use any jutsu, in a practical tone. Yukie sat back down after growling. He was right. She took 2 more drinks, putting her ahead by 3. However, the last 2 drinks took their toll, and Yukie became extremely woozy, swaying back and forth and her vision changing from blurry to normal every few seconds. Rin saw a strange crystal hanging around Yukie's neck, and her eyes widened for a moment before returning to normal as Tatsumi got up and activated his Sharingan, causing the Tomo to start spinning. You need rest, Yukie, Tatsumi said as Yukie was captivated, fell asleep, and was caught by Rin before hitting the ground. Rin said, release the genjutsu, Baka, to her younger brother. With a shaky step, Tatsumi stated, I'd rather not until I'm on the boat and in my bed. Rin let out a sigh. Hinata, Naruto? Are you two able to assist this fool? She questioned them. Naruto and Hinata both said, sure, together. Tatsumi said, hold up, as she turned to face the bartender. How much? Tatsumi nodded and put 1200 ryo on the counter after the man said, 900 ryo, after examining the 3 empty bottles and removing them from the countertop. After saying, keep the change, Tatsumi turned to face the door and, with Naruto and Hinata's assistance, walked shakily to it. After the bartender said, thank you, they departed and headed for the boat, which took almost 20 minutes to get to because of Tatsumi, the bumbling fool. After saying good night to everyone, Naruto and Hinata slipped into their room, and Karen took Tatsumi to his room and sat him down on the bed while Rin took Yukie to hers. Have you ever drank Naruto-kun? By the door, Hinata took off her shoes and asked. Nope, said Naruto, shaking his head. How about you? He inquired. My dad gave me permission to try some once, she said, embarrassed. I almost destroyed a whole building because of it. Astounded, Naruto exclaimed, AW. Whole building? He almost choked on his words as he asked. I used a style of fighting known as drunken gentle fist, Hinata said, nodding. Father has obviously never allowed me to have anything else since, she remarked, grinning slightly at the recollection. That is insane. I would hate to spar against you like that, Naruto said, almost shouting. She was astonished at first, but she smiled and kissed him back after Hinata giggled at him and hugged him, looking up into his eyes and grinning. Tatsumi, the babbling idiot across the hall, had let go of his genjutsu. Baka. Normally, Karen would have been more than happy to comply, but he was intoxicated when he attempted to hold her close to him. Karen. Chan. Tatsumi whimpered and then collapsed back onto his bed, laughing. You can't drink anymore, she reprimanded him. Hey, didn't it get Yukie on this boat? After asking thoughtfully, Tatsumi burst out laughing once more. Yes, it did. Karen told him sharply, go to sleep now. Karen slapped Tatsumi's forehead as she jumped up and fell face first to the floor, saying, I need to go to the bathroom first. She moaned, Baka, and heard faint snores from Tatsumi, who had fallen asleep. She smiled, pulled him up onto the bed, covered him, and lay down beside him, falling asleep shortly after. Then, the whole boat fell silent. No one was awake, and the trip to the land of snow would start the following day. The man in the black robe with the red cloud pattern on it carried twin katanas across his back and 2 more behind his back, one pointing left and the other right. Dodo, I have news of Koyuki and the hex crystal, he said. A big man in the shadows said, go ahead, as he sat in a chair that resembled a throne, his eyes never leaving the screen in front of him, which was playing the movie the Genins had just seen. She's headed over here. My source was able to verify that she possessed the hex crystal. He added that ninjas would be accompanying her. There are 5 in all, but one is a Junin and the others are Genins. The man said, not too much of a problem. Was the Junin described by him? A man who was kneeling next to Dodo's throne and 2 other people, wearing headbands that identified them as snow ninja, said. The man informed them, a female with purple hair and pale eyes is what he said. Sounds like Kakashi Hitaki's student, asserted a female voice. But that's not all. Do you have the devices ready? The man in the cloak asked. I was told that there will be 2 Jinchuriki with them. Yes, Dodo said, shifting in his chair. As requested by your leader, we have them available for use, Dodo remarked, a little uneasy. The man grinned and said, "Good. We'll see what they can do when their chakra is cut off completely." The man laughed ominously and then vanished.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.